Good morning, afternoon, or perhaps evening, everyone out there in the wondrous world made, collective by the incredible entity known as the internet. This is episode 123, 123 of the Warhammer 40,000 podcast known as Look Out, Sir. My name is Dan, and it's that bit at the beginning of the show where I introduce my friend Phil. How's it going, Philip?
I've been devalued down from good buddy to just friend.
Doesn't it feel more substantiated to say that someone is your friend? Good buddy sort of has a sort of weird, sort of almost, I don't know.
That guy you have a drink down the pub with, but
yeah,
you wouldn't invite him home to meet your family.
No, I would not invite that individual home to meet my family. Although I might. I don't really have too much of an issue with people meeting my family, as it were. Although what you've kind of said aligns with, sensibilities around, a different form of relationship, Phil. And I'm not deeply in love with you to the point that you meeting my family would be significant in that sense. But obviously,
well, I'm disappointed.
Oh, I'm sorry to tell you, mate. It's just not. I mean, I like you. I like you a lot, but I don't think we're ready to go to that level.
Fair enough. I'm not your Warhammer wife.
But effectively that is fair. Although again, I don't want to sort of assert any kind of specific role onto you. You are my Warhammer partner.
Fair enough.
There you go. But I wouldn't mind. You haven't met my family, have you?
No, I haven't. Although weirdly, I have chatted with your mum on Instagram a few times, not realizing it was your mum because I think she'd replied to a couple of my posts or our Look Out Sir posts, and then I was like, oh, that person's got Dan's surname. Oh, I think it's his mum.
It is my mum. Yeah, no, she's very supportive of our efforts. Good old mum. So there you go. Well, maybe at some point, Phil, you can swing by and I'll introduce them to you at some point in the future. They are a ways away from me, unfortunately. It does require a good level of concerted effort to be able to put you in the same place as them, much like how we essentially operate this podcast in the general sense. It is a lot of concerted effort to try and get things right. But sometimes, Phil, we make mistakes, don't we? And that's something we have to address from the outset.
Oh, we do, yes. So, apologies in advance, everyone. Last episode, we were talking about Tau battle suits for broadsides, and we were asserting that they would be able to shoot into combat with blast weapons because there was no stipulation on the rules that said, they couldn't, because we assumed that stipulation around blast rules was in the big guns never tire rule, but it isn't. It's actually in the rule to do with blast weapons where you can't shoot in combat with blast. So we thought it was slightly broken that they could do that, but they can't. So, we discovered it later on. Some of our listeners had discovered it as they were listening and wanted to point it out to us. So we thought we would put that correction out there up front, own our mistakes, because either we don't know the rules or the rules are a bit confusing and not where you think they would be when you go to look them up.
I'm going to go with a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, my man. But yeah, that's how that goes. But Phil, besides making terrible errors about, the state of the rules when it concerns Tau specifically, what else are we going to talk about on episode 123 of Look Out Sir?
123, let's go! We are going to be talking about Warzone Nachmund. Vigilus alone. It's not Act 1. It's not Book 1. It is neither of those things. It's just Vigilus alone. The single book that is probably part 1 of 2. So we're going to be going through it today. We're probably going to be talking about the Phobos armies of Renown.
Almost certainly. And then probably those Sisters of Battle, right?
Is it Order of the Bloody Rose? I want to say it's
Order of the Bloody Rose, I think, yeah. I mean, again, it'll be somewhere in the title if we've gotten that wrong.
Yes, that will be Codex supplement.
That is a Codex supplement, yeah, absolutely. And then there's a few other little rules in there. You were telling me there was some kind of banner thing related to Crusade, so we might touch on that. And
that
talk about
seemed
that.
very fun. So I'll jam a bit of Crusade in there against you.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Force feed you some Crusade.
Mate, someone's got to. And then maybe we'll do some general chat as part of the outro, as is usually the way of things. But I guess we'll see how it goes. A little bit of a fluid one, this one. A little bit of a process. Not very well defined, but then, something that I suppose you can come to expect from us in the general sense sometimes. Much like when we do these 5-star reviews.
Come on now, Timmy. You've got your orders. You've got to do it.
But I don't want to, sir.
You've got your orders. Now get up there, get over that trench, and get me that 5-star review, and get it back here right away.
Okay, sir.
This week's... That wasn't even me saying this, but that was sort of some other altogether mad sound. But the point is that this week's 5-star review, Phil, unfortunately, the streak is broken. You're back on 0.
Exactly.
But obviously, we still need to appraise or rather acknowledge the results that you have achieved in the year thus far. I can't remember what the actual tally is, but I know you've failed once out of all the various times you've had.
I think I had 4 correct. I was going to be 5, but that was where I failed. So 4-1 if you're
4-1, okay.
Score. Although saying that, I sort of don't care anymore. So I'm just going to, off the top of my head, say Facebook.
No, I'm afraid not, mate. We're going with Apple Podcasts of the United States of America this time around. And it's from an individual by the name of Time for Crab.
I mean, who doesn't like a bit of crab?
Well, exactly. I'm curious of the kind of implication of Time for Crab. Is it the consumption of crab, the random appearance of crabs, giant enemy crabs?
Crab attacks.
Crab people? It's all possible.
I mean, there's a fair amount of crab hands in the Warhammer 40k and fantasy universes. So it could be, Slaanesh themed.
Could very well be.
Cheeky claw.
Slaanesh has really kind of, dulled down the whole crab hand vibe. There's not very many crabs in 40k anymore.
Well, that's because we're still waiting on Emperor's Children Space Marines to.
Do you think that's when they're going to ramp up the crab hands again?
Yeah, because in AOS, in the Demonet range, and some of the models that they've done for that, there has been crab hands.
They've got a little sprinkling of crab.
Yeah.
A few little, there you go. Although, actually, if I remember correctly, that elf army, I can't remember how to pronounce, the Idemeth Deepkin or something. They had a little gang for that game.
Underworlds, which had a crab model in it, indeed.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
It was, I don't think it was model of the year, but it was like second place or something, because there was there was a concerted campaign to make it model of the year.
Have you ever watched the Japanese movie where a crab is a goalkeeper?
No.
No, you never watched Crab Goalkeeper?
I mean, I've watched some mad Japanese movies in my time. That, unfortunately, is not one of them.
Mate, it's a fantastic film. It's about a crab that wants to be, is a goalkeeper.
Okay, fulfilled his life goals.
Exactly. It's part of a weird series of, sea critters become sports stars films.
I mean, the other one, a bit like Teen Wolf.
Could be.
Team Crab.
Team Crab. What's Teen Wolf, Phil? Fill me in here.
Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox.
Teen Wolf.
Not Teen Wolf.
I thought you said Teen Wolf. I was like, I was about to ask if you were on about Teen Wolf, but no, okay, fine. No. That's such a mainstream reference, Phil. I'm here giving you crab goalkeepers from Japan.
I know. You're upping your game. You had a couple of compliments about your obscure references over the last few. It's gone to your head.
Mate, it's a really good film, though. I mean, it's not. It just depends whether you like those weird kind of like kaiju monstery type movies that Japan do, which I love. I love those films. And although this isn't a kaiju type monster smashing up a cityscape, it's just a dude in a crab costume being a goalkeeper. It's pretty spectacular. Anyway, there you go. But also it's part of a series. There's another one, I think, about a squid that becomes a professional wrestler, which is also pretty amazing. Anyway, look, let's talk about Time for Crabs 5-star review, which they have nicely given us on Apple Podcasts of the USA. And if you would like to leave us a 5-star review like Time for Crabs, please consider doing so, because you too could find yourself in one of these tedious segments where we spend about 5 minutes prattling on about nothing of anything before actually getting on to saying thank you. So let's try and do that now. I feel like one of the chaps, and especially, common statement within the Americas, Phil. Do you feel like the Americans are referring to each other as chaps on the regular?
Maybe he's secretly British.
Maybe. Here we go. 5 stars. Much love from across the pond. I love listening to these guys go back and forth about all aspects of the 40k hobby. Their style of conversational podcast is something I don't much usually enjoy. Oh, hang on. I don't much enjoy usually. Okay, fair enough. That was me getting my words in a funny order. But something about this one makes me feel like I'm at the bar with some friends. It would be nice, wouldn't it, Phil, if we actually just started recording this in a bar setting?
Well, it'd be terribly noisy for a start.
It would be.
And
I've definitely felt like at some point we need to start coming together to record these in person rather than doing them over the interwebs,
I mean, I feel like you're slightly biased because you will make me come to you.
Well, that's because I'll probably be the one with the setup. But the reality of the situation is you'll come to me and then I'll have to drive you home. So, it's a lose-lose for
dream.
me.
Well, that is also true. Yeah.
Anyway, you make my daily commute just a whole lot better. Thank you for everything you do. Also, started a Minotaur army about a month ago. What's the over-under on getting them tabletop ready before Phil? I mean, so this individual. So bear in mind, right? This to speak to our kind of backlog. This review came across in early October, so we can assert that they obviously started their Minotaurs army in September. I'd say that it's highly probable that they got their army to the tabletop before Phil, although Phil did actually manage in October to get 1,000 points on the tabletop, right, mate?
I did. I've got more than 1,000 points ready, tabletop standard. More than tabletop standard. But
all right,
it was a doubles event, so I was, 1,000 points was my allocation. It's quite funny you say that, because I did basically back in October was when I started painting up my Contemptors, which will bring me up to 1,750 plus ish points. Not quite 2,000, 1,750 because of the amount. I've got those two to still do. I still haven't really done much on them over the last few months. I've actually been busy with other things. But I did a little vote on my Instagram because I basically said I'm taking my Minotaurs to the RFW2 event in May. And I said, can I get my 2 Contemptors finished in time? What do you think the results were?
Well, I voted no.
How dare you? It was basically,
I know you. I know what's going to happen. It's going to be a no.
That's also fair enough. It was 76 to yes and 24, including you, to no. That was like out of 150 people.
Bloody hell, look at that. Flexing the old Instagram numbers there.
My guess. Yeah. I mean, but more for the percentage of yes to no's pretty high. Confident in me. Clearly, those people don't know me.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm always confident in you. I'm just confident that, you won't do it. Say thank you to Time for Crabs, and then we're going to move on because, this intro segment... God, I can't talk today. This intro segment has been long enough already, Phil.
No, Time for Crabs. Thank you very much. My bros of the Minotaurs, my brothers in bronze. You picked a good army, a good chapter even. We can be the mean boy bullies in the schoolyard together if you happen to be in my neighborhood. We can gang up on those, Lamenter chapters, for example. Boo hiss. But yeah, thank you for the lovely review. Glad you enjoy us on your commute. Hope you're going heading off to a lovely job or coming back from it after a hard day's work. Thank you very much. Keep listening. And, I'm sure I'll sprinkle in some Minotaurs references for you throughout. So keep listening.
There you go. Thank you very much. Time for Crab. Again, as is always the way, we have a Patreon, so maybe consider doing something with that. Maybe not. Up to you, innit? There's also merchandise, so think about that. And obviously, if you would like to leave us a 5-star review, much like Time for Crab, maybe consider doing so. And if you do so on a platform that isn't Facebook or iTunes, then let us know on Facebook or Instagram, because if it's not iTunes and Facebook, we will not be aware of it, because unfortunately, we're not very good at checking all the myriad of platforms that apparently we exist on. And that's it. Let's transition to the start of the show. Transitional noise. Hello, you lovely individuals. In this part of the podcast, we're going to talk about Warzone Nachmund, Vigilus alone. Is it Nachmund? Nachmund? What is the pronunciation we feel of Nachmund?
I would say Nachmund.
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 Mund.
Nachmund.
Oh, it's probably Mund. Yes.
It's a fictional word. You can pronounce it probably how you like. Until, of course, you're corrected by the orators of Black Library.
Absolutely. There are people out there in the world who will tell you that you are supposed to say it in very specific ways, but unfortunately none of those are here now, so we're just going to have to wing it. So apologies for all the various variables of how we pronounce Nachmund throughout the course of this. But this is a Warzone book, so innately I hate it, Phil. It's the worst thing ever. Warzone is terrible. Everything about it, rubbish, right? Isn't that the sentiment?
Is it because it's got interesting, or maybe not very interesting, lore, story, setting? It's very campaign-esque. It's a bit narrative. It's a bit crusade, Dan. Is that what turns you off?
Well, exactly. Am I to, ascertain from that kind of rigorous defense that you almost kind of offered there that you are still in favor of the Warzone books?
Yes,
well,
basically.
Holding strong.
However, I'm enjoying them. There've been peaks and troughs as the stories go in terms of how good each one is. And I would say, in an ideal world, if they had produced all the codexes in the first year and a half of 9th edition, followed up with all of these Warzone books, it would be like a knockout success. And no one, with the exception of people complaining about the price, would really have any legitimate complaints about these books.
Well, I'm sure they could come up with something.
Well, the lack of bookmark. Maybe.
Well, that is a thing, isn't it? In this fine edition, this is yet another Warzone book without a bookmark. So
exactly. Bookmark watch. This one has failed.
This one has failed. Either that, or both me and Phil have been given faulty copies where our bookmarks have gone bye-byes. But I don't think that's the case.
And like previous books, so I think we started off with Act 1 with Octarius, and then we had Book 1 and 2, obviously with Charadon. Sector, and now we're just, I think we've already said this maybe in the intro, it's just called Vigilus alone. There's no numbers this time around. No, indicating that this stands alone as a singular entity. Who knows what to follow, but we'll still most likely get a second part, I imagine.
Quite possibly, but that will be Vigilus together, thus completing the thing. Vigilus in concert. Because it's become somewhat tradition when we talk about books, let's do a little bit of chatting about the overall kind of, delivery of this thing. A couple weird nuances to this book, but let's get to the start, which is the cover. Probably one of the most underwhelming covers of Warhammer 40,000 in terms of the consistent way that Games Workshop deliver artwork on the Warzone books. There are sometimes some interesting little tidbits, but pretty typically the Warzone covers have been amongst the worst covers in Warhammer. And I think this kind of follows in that trend. Not that it's aggressively or egregiously bad, but it's just not remarkably awesome. And also is essentially the same cover as what you'll get if you've got the grand tournament pack, right?
Yes, that could be seen as unifying branding. And,
that could
nice consistency, but for other people, it is I've already seen this image, I want something new.
Yes.
I would say it is definitely been given the slightly lower tier budget when it comes to producing artwork. Not to say it's bad, because I actually really like it personally, but it does pale in comparison to, say, the Adeptus Mechanicus Codex, the Gene Stealer Cult Codex. Anything with the word cult in as a codex has some of the best cover artwork, and that's jam-packed with detail. These, it's just not even Horus, it's Abaddon, isn't it? On his own, as a Terminator. Looks all right, but there's not much more detail beyond him.
The thing that's weird is, because if you turn to page 15, you see the full piece of artwork, and you actually realise that it's a really nice piece of artwork in and of itself. It's just that for the cover, they've, essentially just focused in on Abaddon, and they've kind of framed him in this, I guess, part of the Chaos Pointy Star thing, right?
Well, I actually thought it's part of the... I was going to say Eye of Horus, but you're right. Maybe it's the downwards bit of the
Pointy Star bit.
Pointy Star, yeah.
Yeah, but either way, right? Like, I think the actual full piece of artwork, when you actually see it, is actually really engaging, and it's got these really beautiful demonic details in the bottom, where you've got like something that I could only assert is associated with Zench to the left, and then maybe something more kind of Slanesh to the right. You've got this kind of ever-changing demonic entity there, which is absolutely amazing. And then you've got this really crazy kind of like goat creature whose horns actually turn into a hand that are grasping the scalp of its owner, which is beautiful. So there's some really nice details in the actual artwork. It's just you don't really get to see those when you look at the front cover.
No, it's true. They feel like they're kind of weird demonic navigators as part of his ship.
Yes, yeah, no, I get that vibe. What happened though, Where's old, the old demony sword, old Drachnyen? Where's that gone? He's left it on the shelf today, I guess.
Yeah, someone's polishing it.
Someone's polishing. That would be one of the worst jobs ever. Like someone, of all of the armor fools, the poor guy who has to polish Drachnyen. That's got to be a job and a half, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
But there you go. So yeah, cover-wise, not the best. Weird extra detail for some reason, and this was in both mine and Phil's copy. So I'm curious to know, again, if we have miraculously stumbled across some terrible, faulty versions. But for no reason that I could ascertain, there is a paper backing to this edition of the book that, once removed from the back of the book, reveals the identical details beneath. There is literally no difference between what has been essentially inserted as an extra piece of paper on the back and what resides on the back of the book. And I was trying to get my head around why that has happened, and I literally can't think of any reason why.
I forgot that this had that in. Yeah, basically it's like a back slip. That normally it would make sense if the barcode was wrong or the text needed to change, and they print out effectively a fake back cover that then gets added to it. But I went through it with a pretty fine tooth comb.
You were incensed by this. You were like, there must be a reason. There must be.
Yeah, it just looked completely identical. So maybe there was a mistake where they sent them the actual back artwork and not the revised one. And my dear partner works in publishing, and I was like, what? Why would they do this? And she actually had no clue why it would happen. It's just a waste of money, really.
Do you think potentially it was to do, and this is just, talking harebrained ideas, but do you think potentially because obviously there would be multiple markets where they would release a English language version of it, right? So, they might have been releasing these in Australia, they might have done it in the US, and maybe in those instances they needed a different barcode for those markets. So maybe it just became one of those weird bulk printy run things where someone in their ops department made a mistake and ticked the wrong box and basically
so the UK got one even though it didn't need it, but the other countries would have had a different version. Maybe, yeah.
Potentially. Maybe we should hear from our American listeners. Did your version have the weird papery bit at the back? And did it, in the doing of, unveil a different barcode once it was removed, because at least then that would be a reason. But again, interestingly, because I suppose as well, this is obviously, I mean, all codexes are wrapped, but this was wrapped based on the fact that it also featured a poster as well. That's quite interesting, isn't it? I didn't know I was getting a poster.
Oh yeah, so you get effectively a campaign map / poster in it that you can hang up and show your progress in the campaign using the campaign rules that feature in the book.
I'm sure everyone out there has done that. I know I certainly have.
Yes, as you glance suspiciously like you've only just opened it for the first time.
No. I opened it. No, yeah. It's fair to say that I probably wasn't interested in buying this if not for the whole we do this podcast thing. Like and that's probably why I was surprised when the poster fell free from it, because I've literally paid no attention to what this book is. I just was like, well, I'm going to need to buy it because I'm going to need to talk about it eventually.
Yeah, so, it's weird because I was interested in it, and I remember when, in terms of the marketing, or at least on the Games Workshop web store, I thought it only mentioned the campaign map with the limited edition version. So I was actually surprised that we got it in the standard edition. So that's a nice touch. I don't know if that was something they just didn't mention, or they did mention it and I just didn't pick up on it, that it was also available in the regular version.
Well, it's not like Games Workshop's kind of community team to, spread misinformation concerning the product lineup that they are bringing to market. That would certainly not be, form when it comes to those guys. But hey, look, they do a good job. Let's not be mean. They're good people. Working under very difficult conditions, I'm sure. But yeah, look, I mean, overall in terms of impressions as a tome, I can't remember how much it cost. How much did it cost, Phil?
Oh, I want to say 25 quid, but I actually don't know.
See, this, we do our own research, everybody. That's how big time we've become, Phil, that we buy these things. We don't even, utter a thought about, the purchase price of it anymore. We're just like, well, of course we're going to buy it. And then by the time you've inevitably chucked a few extra Warhammer related things into your shopping cart on Element Games, you just accept the fact that you're handing over 60 to 70 quid in order to achieve their, their free postage limit, right?
Yeah, that is what I did. I bought the captain and the banner guy, basically. I can confirm
bought a load of pink paints.
Oh, for your elder. I can confirm it is £30. From Games Workshop, which I think originally some of them were 35 and they went down maybe to 30. I'm sure some were 25, but I could be wrong. But it is advertised front and center with the map on it, which I don't recall. But I'm clearly wrong on that respect.
Well, there you go. All is fairly legit when it comes to that side of things. But yeah, look, as a tome for the price, I think I'm coming to a point where I think early doors when they first announced these Warzone books, I was like many people really unimpressed with them. I was very much like, oh God, can we not just get all the codexes out first, please, before we start chucking in all this extra stuff? But then, I think throughout Games Workshop's history, they've done these kind of books, and it's a pretty common occurrence for them to chuck out this extra content in the form of extra books. So I don't necessarily find it too displeasing, but I definitely wasn't super into it. Whereas now I'd say I've sort of arrived at a state of numbness with them. They don't offend me in any way, shape or form. I accept they exist. I'm just a little less invested in, owning and, engaging with them. But hey, here we go. I've got it. So, something must be working. I mean, what's your vibe on it, Phil? I've said a bunch. What do you reckon?
I quite like it. The maps are really nice within inside. And for the first time, because my one criticism of some of the others is they go, here's the Octaria sector. And they give you maps of the Octaria sector or the Charadon sector. But they won't actually show you where within the galactic map it actually sits. And this is the first time they've actually done this in the war zones that I can tell. So you've got the sort of big map with the Eye I've Terror highlighted the Cicatrix Maledictum splitting. You've got a white part, which is the normal part of the Imperium. Then you've got the dark part, which is all blocked off. And then you've got Holy Terror. So you can quite easily see where Vigilus sits. But with the other campaign books, they didn't do that. So I was like, where is this meant to be set? So that was my only criticism of the previous ones in terms of their maps. This one's pretty good. According to this, though, Vigilus sits more on the side of the Imperium Nihilus. I always thought it was on the side towards the Norman Imperium.
Potentially. Well, I mean, clearly now it is. I mean, who knows? I know that they've gone to various lengths to retcon certain aspects of the established stuff they did in 8th edition.
Well, so what's interesting with this one is they've expanded it out, so it's not just about Vigilus the planet, and it's actually more about the Nachmund subsector, and it's about the actual gauntlet itself, which is the passage between the normal part of the Imperium and Imperium Nihilus, and the route and the planets and the sectors sort of surrounding it. So they've turned it from one planet to a much larger scale, which I think is really good. And in terms of the retconning, in terms of the story that I've read so far, I'm probably only about a quarter of the way in. The first few pages talk about effectively what happened in the last Vigilus book, which was the 8th edition Vigilus books, and about how Abaddon fought Minus Calgar. Minus Calgar was mortally wounded, but not mortally wounded in the literal sense, because it's 40k. So he has survived. He has been rushed off, and he's escaped the sector. Abaddon basically had his ship attacked by a bunch of nukes. The Imperial Guard variety Death Strike missile launchers, all in like a cargo container, I think. So his ship was badly damaged, so he sort of escaped into the warp as well. And it's now talking about the aftermath of all of that. And what was good, because I think everyone complained about Minus Calgar, it was like, oh yes, he got mortally wounded, but he survived. Everyone was like, oh, plot armor. But with this, they've actually kind of given it some legitimacy, and they talk about how rumors have spread that he's actually dead, because the communication's really badly. Word didn't actually get out that he survived, because he kind of effectively got rushed off the world straight away. So everyone's just assumed he's dead, and it's actually talking about the fallout of that, and it sort of makes his, what everyone was complaining, plot armor, actually have a much wider impact on the setting. So it actually feels like he's died, even though he obviously hasn't. But it's the impact of that, and the morale on lots of planets have fallen. A lot of them have succumbed to chaos and chaos cults, whereas for others it's actually bolstered their resolve, as they're still fighting, because there's still loads of there's like Gene Stealer cults and orcs still on Vigilus itself, and chaos, but chaos is rife within the whole sector.
Sounds interesting. I like the whole information or lack thereof concerning what went down with Calgar, and the idea that people actually think that it went a bit worse for him than might have been suspected. So that's quite a cool sort of twist on the evolving kind of world narrative around it. But obviously, as we know, it all worked out fine. He got his plot armor, and it was all right. He just sort of, he just got a few of his hearts cut open. That's fine, because know, Marines have a never-ending organ resource, as it were. They're just organed up to the nines, it seems.
But at least it is good that he's kind of out of the story for the time being, and he isn't just back straight away. And maybe he'll come back in the next book. Who knows?
I mean, that would make sense, right? Because I mean, he did take an awful lot of sword to the various hearts.
Yeah, so it is good that they've kind of just pushed him to the side to allow the story to focus on other things, and also to make his battle with Abaddon and make Abaddon more of a bad guy, and not just like a guy that lost and ran away, like Skeletor. Tee-hee, I'll be back.
I mean, he needed to get back on the vengeful spirit to stop it from, being like attacked or something. I can't remember. Like it was looking rough for that vengeful spirit for a while. And if I know anything about those kind of fictional space conflicts, you've got loads of time to retreat to a ship when it's in some kind of, intergalactic space conflict. There's no risk that a massive thing like that that is in a losing effort would not just basically, over the course of a relatively short period of time be destroyed. No, it can, and obviously was salvaged by virtue of him going back to it and seemingly going, leave, made all the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, yeah, I think that's the problem with 8th edition overall. I think as an edition I think that was probably one of the most egregious editions in terms of a lack of desire to do anything especially risky. I think weirdly I've seen more interesting opportunities for 9th edition to start to actually be a little bit more edgy with some of its storytelling, and I do kind of like the fact that Games Workshop are trying a bit more, but obviously they've not taken any like crazy plunges. I still think that like Dante should be killed off. That's my major major thing.
At least with Minus Calgott, they've kind of killed him off in all but name. They've done what happened to Castellan Creed. It's like he was on Cadia and then he got zipped into a Tesseract vault or shard of some kind by I can't remember the Necron Lord's name, but by one of them. So he's still alive, but he's effectively out of the story for now, and has been ever since, basically. And that's 2 editions of the game. So it might be they do something with Minus Calgott where you just don't hear about him in the lore for a while, and eventually they will bring him back. So it's like a fake death. It's a pseudo death, which is a good way of doing it, where they're just not writing the character off, especially since they just gave him a new model. But it's like you can still play with him, you can still play the model and the character in your games, but technically he's recovering somewhere, probably back on Ultramar.
Yes, much like Lionel Johnson. He's just chilling out, getting better.
Exactly. Yeah,
and he will return when he's needed most, or potentially as part of whatever occurs in Marine Codex 2.0.
Yeah, indeed.
What was I also going to say? Oh, on the topic of Games Workshop kind of coming up with new kind of expanded versions of the laws that they established in 8th edition. I accidentally the other day, although I've refunded it since, ended up rebuying by accident one of the Dark Imperium audiobooks because of the £3 sale on Audible.
Do you know what? I did the same thing because there's effectively, and I double checked my audio library. So the very first Dark Imperium book got reissued because they redid some of the audio and they gave it new.
They all got reissued.
Artwork. Well, no, because the other 2 hadn't come out at that point. It was they basically, I think they only redid the first one because the second one then came out.
Dark Imperium and Plague War both got reissued.
Oh, was it both of them? I thought that
there's
one.
There's a third one that wasn't reissued. That was the one that was done more in line with this, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it was basically fixing the time jump from several hundred years to 12 years. So it's effectively sort of part way into the Indomitus Crusade and not right at the very end. But I've actually kept them both, basically, in terms of the audiobooks, because I want to actually see if it's different to the first one. But I would have assumed that the original.
I'll tell you what the difference is. Do you know what the difference is? There's a disclaimer at the start that explains what they've changed. There's literally a bit at the start where the narrator goes, right, just so you know, now we're getting on with it.
But it actually has been updated in the story as well.
I think probably, but I think they do like a whole thing about it at the start.
Have you re-listened to your original audiobook to see if that got updated? Because I assume it hasn't, because the artwork's still the old.
No, I would assume not. No, I think I would guess that. I mean, again, it wouldn't surprise me if Games Workshop just continued to sell the old version and then just be like, well, if you bought it, fair enough.
I think it still exists in your library, but you can't buy the old one.
Oh, they actually got rid of it now.
Yeah, it's because you can't see it. You can just see the new one, basically.
There you go.
So I've technically got both, but I was like, for £3, it's fine, because I've just finished the second Dawn of Fire book. I'm now going to read or listen to the third one, and then I'm going to go back to Dark Imperium. So I wanted to re-listen to that one anyway, and I was like, I'll pay £3.
You still owned it, Phil. £3.
No, I know, but I just wanted the updated version to see what had actually changed.
Well,
I'm a
fair enough.
sucker. I'm a sucker, clearly.
You are. I mean, it's relatively easy to refund those mistaken purchases on the Amazons.
If I listen to
Audible
it and I
prices.
don't think it's worth £3, I will refund my purchase.
Well, there you go. There you go. I think there is a time window though, mate. So you might have to make that a priority listen of yours.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Are you going to listen to the whole thing and then decide that you didn't want it?
Yeah.
Does that work? I feel like there's that. I'm pretty
I-
sure they'll have methods to stop that from being.
I got the impression that's what Joe does all the time.
Well, potentially.
Not that I want to promote that as a form of activity, but I'm sure he's talked about that a few times.
I'm actually, not that we need to get on a tangent today, but I'm gobsmacked by the amount of Audible books I've got now. It's like literally, like I was going through it the other day. I was like, this is more than I'm ever going to listen to already.
No, same. It's but they're still sucking
it's all
me
Warhammer.
in. No,
it's all Warhammer.
I know.
I mean, I'm nothing if not typecast, but there we go. On the topic of books about Warhammer, although not Audible, although again, obviously we are Audible. Are we on Audible, Phil?
I wouldn't have thought so, because
No, I don't think we
Audible is. I think they only do Audible exclusive podcasts.
I mean, we could be for sale though, couldn't we? I mean, we could take. I mean, I'll take some of that Amazon money.
I bet Bezos don't need it.
Do you not think Bezos is crying out for a Warhammer 40,000 podcast to sign exclusively on his platform?
Oh, yeah, probably. I mean, he doesn't need the money. He's got enough.
No, I'm not saying Bezos needs the money. I'm saying he needs to give it to me.
Well, exactly. I mean, he doesn't need it, therefore...
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah, there you go. So he should give it all to me. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, 50-50 between the both of us.
Well, that's true. That's true.
It's fine. I need at least some of it to afford a new heater for my shed.
Was that lead to back up your crazy £3 purchasing decisions?
Yes.
That is true, actually. The fact that you're heatingless in the shed at the moment is adding quite a nice kind of... It's a shame that we don't record this, this video feed, because you kind of dressed from head to toe in your winter wear is definitely adding a certain something to this.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Oh, no. Okay, carry on.
All right. Should we move on and actually talk about some of the rules inside this book? What's the plan?
Let's go for it, yeah.
All right, cool. So I reckon, just because it would make sense to do so, I'll do the transitional noise and we'll come back. And the first thing we'll talk about is Phobos. And then we'll talk about Sisters of Battle, right?
Perfect.
Beautiful. Transitional noise. Whoa. In this part of the podcast, we are going to talk about the Vanguard Spearhead Army of Renown. But what is a Vanguard Spearhead, Phil? I've never heard of it.
Well, basically, if you think of all the Phobos stuff that a Space Marine army can take, it's that.
So this is the fabled Phobos thing that people have been talking about now and again.
I guess so, yeah.
It's almost certainly.
Because on the doubles event, me and Richie played against an army, one of which was all Phobos, the other was all Gravis. Nice. So this guy was like, if only it was that book came out a few weeks earlier.
He would have been living the dream of potentially all of the amazing rules that make up all of the Vanguard Spearhead. I mean, I assume it's good. I've not read it yet. So we're going to go through it and form some opinions on it. So Phobos stuff, in the general sense, we may as well just have a little bit of a chat about what is and is not technically Phobos within the confines of current Space Marines. So that is basically, from the troop side of things, it's your incursors and your infiltrators. Infiltrators kind of being considered by some the more kind of default troop status. But I think the incursors get a good showing, don't they? They seem to get a lot of popularity from the Space Marine fan base. They're quite a good option, all things told.
Yep, yeah, for sure.
And then obviously HQ wise, you've got the various forms of lieutenant, librarian, and captain. I don't think there's any other Phobos variants.
No chaplain yet.
No chaplain yet, which is a bit of a shame, to be honest with you, because you kind of feel like a chaplain would do quite well in Phobos, but then maybe it sort of goes against what they're sort of supposed to be, maybe.
Meant to be more sneaky rather than... I mean, they are quite close combat orientated, well, some of the units are. But yeah, it feels like a chaplain's more like a main battle line type character.
Yeah, chaplains are the sort of dudes that, are screaming at the, top of their lungs as they're running forwards into the fray. So it's not really something that you kind of come to expect.
I mean, a judicia would be quite appropriate because they're not meant to talk.
Oh, yeah. A
Silently.
Phobos Judicia.
Yeah.
That'd be quite something. I mean, maybe something to think about. But then again, he does run around with a massive hourglass and a humongous sword. But then I suppose that probably doesn't massively matter given the fact that the librarian is running around with a luminous psychic sword. So I guess, the jury's out on the overall actual stealthy efficiency of this.
Well, I love how it's Ultramarines are in bright blue armor, but then have like a camo cloak over, which makes it all okay. And I think for logic it's meant to be like some kind of active camo where it, somehow conceals all of them.
I think, this is one of those situations, though, isn't it, where, the tabletop war game kicks in. These models are not a actual representation of how these actual miniatures would be adorned when going to battle. It's quite probable that even Ultramarines, when, going on stealthy missions, would recolor their armor into more appropriate camo schemes and probably ghillie suit themselves up.
Well, yeah, they used to. So Rogue Trader artwork is full of like actual like camo style armor, and then even in the Badab War books by Forge World, they did kind of camo variants of some of the armor patterns, which was really cool. And I remember when the Reavers came out, they basically tried to knock that on the head because they basically said they're terror troops. They're meant to be seen. They're meant to be like, come at me, bro, to actually instill fear into their enemies, which is why they're not in camo. But yeah, for the rest of the Phobos, it's a bit tenuous, I guess. But that was a similar logic in sort of the shift away from camo. The whole point is you're meant to see the Marines coming because they're trying to instill fear into their enemy.
That's true. They're scary. On that topic, the only elite choice, or rather, they've actually got two elite choices. Actually, I was wrong there. So they've got the Reaver, probably one of the most misunderstood units in all of 40k, in so much as they seemingly can't get them right. Hopefully, with Marine Codex 2.0, we'll finally see some actual viability from the Reaver squad, because that would be really nice. But at the moment, they're a bit underwhelming. And then obviously you've got the Invicta Tactical Warsuit, which is like a dreadnought, which infiltrates and is also worse. There you go. Fun facts about that one. Heavy support, I'm fairly sure this is the category where they most under-index, right? Like, I think heavy support is pretty lacking unless you can think of anything, because obviously the suppressors... Oh, that's right. Of course, it's eliminators. Of course, it is. Yes. So
it's weird that they're heavy though, and not elites.
I mean, they're pretty heavy. They're wielding...
I guess they've got heavy weapon, like the las fusils are kind of heavy weapons. But sniper to me isn't a heavy weapon, but maybe it is.
I mean, their snipers are pretty big. They're like sniping with rocket launchers essentially.
But it's funny that the tactical warsuit isn't in the heavy slot then.
Well. Yeah, for some reason, the kind of dreadnought profile has decided to go and occupy the elite space, which is totally fair enough, I guess. But yeah, so you've got the eliminators on heavy support, so you can fill out that with eliminators, which are a pretty great unit, especially since they've had their points reduction. I think now they're a pretty tasty option. Fast attack-wise, you've got the suppressors, which you still can't buy separately, by the way.
Weird.
It's really weird. Like, the only place you can get suppressors is that combat patrol.
Yeah, but I think there's some of the chaos stuff as well that came out in that dual box set where it's the same.
Well, hopefully at some point they get around to actually releasing the suppressors properly. And then, interestingly, because I was pretty sure that Storm Speeders were Phobos, they've got Phobos guys in them. They're clearly supposed to be Phobos. But as I understand it, they are absent from this in terms of you can't take the Storm Speeders.
Well, so here's the thing I was going to say. An Invicta Tactical Warsuit doesn't have the Phobos keyword, but it's the light variant of a Dreadnought. Weirdly, do suppressors have the Phobos keyword? Because here, in terms of how you build the army, they've said Phobos, keyword suppressor squad, Invicta tactical warsuit, and impulsor units. So I assume suppressors don't have the Phobos keyword. Otherwise, why add them in the list?
So suppressor squad have smokescreen core, Primaris, suppressor squad, jump pack, infantry, fly, and then Imperium Adeptus Astartes. So yeah, you're right. They're not, even though they
clearly look like they've got Phobos, or do they?
Are they Phobos? They're not actually, really, are they? When you actually look at them again, I don't know.
I think everyone just assumes they are.
They're more like actually
they came out at the same
regular
time.
Primaris Marines. Actually, they look like, when you actually look at them again. I haven't looked at them in such a long time. They do sort of look like they're just regular Primaris Marines, as opposed to
yes, because they've got a standard shoulder pads. They just came out in the box set, which was all about Phobos.
There you go. You learn something every day.
Thing every day. Yeah,
exactly. Stuff that other people probably already knew. And then, in terms of the actual Storm Speeders, which are very, very Phobos-y, because they are definitely piloted by Phobos people. They've got Hellstrike, Storm Speeder, Vehicle Fly, Imperium Adeptus Astartes. So they don't have Phobos either. I do think
odd that they're not in here, but at the same time, are they stealthy like the rest are meant to be?
Well, I don't think it necessarily always. I mean, we've already established, Phil, that Phobos doesn't necessarily mean stealthy. It just means Phobos. So I don't know. I feel like it's a weird thing, right? Because actually now we have basically come to the extent of everything that is Phobos. So you've got Eliminators, Infiltrators, Incursors, Reavers, and you've got the assortment of characters, and maybe a push the Hounds of Morkai if you're doing it as Space Wolves. I assume the Hounds of Morkai are Phobos, given the fact that they wear Phobos armor. Yeah,
well, they're Reavers in all but name, so I would assume so. Yes. It's interesting here in the little blurb they talk about, these forces outmaneuver their foes in every turn and are masters of a precision strike. So I would say Storm Speeders would fall under that category.
Yeah. Also, the Hounds of Morkai are indeed Phobos.
Well done.
There you go. Then another potential use for the Hounds of Morkai. Somewhere, sometime, someone will use the Hounds of Morkai somewhere. I've never seen it. I've not even heard rumblings of it. I would actually love it if someone out there listening to this who runs the Hounds of Morkai on the regular would reach out to us and actually tell us about their experiences with the Hounds of Morkai.
Send us photos. Yeah.
Send us photos. Call us up. We'll get you on the show. We'll do an interview. We'll do a whole segment. Tell me why Hounds of Morkai. That's what it will be.
Exactly.
Anyway,
that sounds brilliant.
So anyway, the point is Vanguard Spearhead is an army of renown, and the whole deal with an army of renown, if you don't already know, is that essentially you get a bunch of benefits in return for a bunch of restrictions. So Phil, we may as well start from the top, mate. Tell us about them restrictions.
So we've already alluded to most of them. So basically, you can only include Phobos keyword, Suppressor Squad keyword, Invicta Tactical Warsuit keyword, and Impulsor keyword units. In addition, you can't include any Death Watch if people are thinking about shenanigansing your army with some Death Watch keyword on top of your Phobos armor.
It's a crying shame, Phil. They should have been able to Death Watch themselves up.
I mean, it feels logical, but I guess Vanguard's Spearhead are maybe meant to be different from kill teams, or they've just gone, there'd be too many rules interactions, which will just, make them too good or something.
Yeah. I suppose the thing, isn't it, because you've got the Phobos kill team, and I suppose you could do a lot of weird shenanigans with the kill team on top of all of the stuff that this potentially presents. So I guess it makes sense. But, Phobos feels like a Death Watchy type thing, so it's a shame.
Completely.
Completely. Limit that. Tis what it is. There's a bunch of benefits, though, Phil. Tell us about those.
So all the units gain the Vanguard Spearhead keyword, which will unlock a bunch of other stuff. You have access to the chapter relics, stratagems, and tools of the Vanguard, whatever that will be. The Vanguard Spearhead units in your army gain the Vanguard operations ability, and if you're battle forged, Incursor squads, Infiltrator squads, and Reaver squads all gain the objective secured ability. Ooh.
I mean, that might almost make them
Reavers. Does it make them good already, just off of that?
I would assume not. No,
Well-
although it certainly doesn't hurt, right? Because, you know, Reavers being OBSEC, I suppose, does add some... it does seem like an interesting thing.
It doesn't hurt. Sprinkle that on. You know, I wouldn't complain. But let's see what the Vanguard operations rule is. Let's see if it makes them a bit better. So there's 4 stipulations for this. So the unit can never gain a chapter tactic. I guess maybe this is why they can't be Deathwatch. Each time a ranged attack is made against a unit with this ability, if the attacker is more than 18 inches away, then your unit is treated as having the benefits of light cover against that attack. So, you know, +1 to your arm save. Not bad. Each time an infantry unit with this ability is selected to make a normal move, if every model in that unit ends that move at least 4 inches away from where it started, until the end of that turn, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the attack's hit rolls. So it's forcing you to move a good chunk of your actual movement, which is interesting stipulation, but makes sense. It's to stop you from doing the howl thing that we talked about. I've just gone around in a circle to end up where I started. Huzzah! But I've done my full movement. And then the last one is each time a unit with this ability consolidates, each model can move up to 6 inches instead of 3. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, the consolidation one's quite an interesting one for sure. I think the thing that's quite interesting about that is the fact that obviously if you're getting the +1 to hit, you think about the kind of units you've got access to. And you think about things like the Eliminators and actually start to realize that because they've got Ballistic Skill 2+, as long as you're constantly moving them, they're always going to be Ballistic Skill 2+, which is pretty meaningful. But then also, obviously, the other weapons, which are not heavy, are also going to be Ballistic Skill 2+, because you're going to be, getting the +1 and not then obviously suffering the minus as well. So you could actually start to come up with some interesting designs around having Eliminator squads that are able to be more mobile. So certainly things like the Las Fusel thing would be quite interesting. And also the Sergeant upgrade, like maybe 2 Las Fusels and a and the bolter would be super interesting, because if I remember correctly, the bolter allows you to essentially move, shoot, move. So you could effectively have the bolter move, fire your Lazes and the bolter, and then move again back into cover. So you could be doing all of the battle focused shenanigans that comes along with the upcoming information that they're sharing about the Elder. These lovely Phobos peeps could be doing it already.
Yeah, that could be pretty cool.
I'm going to just double check that rule because I've sort of said it with enough authority that it needs checking. So covering fire in your shooting phase after this unit has shot, if it is not within engagement range of enemy units and contains an eliminated sergeant equipped with an instigator, a bolter carbine, it can make a normal move as if it were your movement phase. So there you go. So you can be doing move, shoot, moves with Ballistic Skill 2+, as long as you move over 4 inches.
Because are they 2+ normally then?
They are base 2+, yeah. So the Eliminators come at 2+. They get the +1, but they obviously suffer the -1 for having moved. So they net out.
Well, yeah, because there's no benefit to, unless they're shooting through dents. There's no real reason why you wouldn't do that then.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it just makes an interesting kind of potential build there. The only problem is obviously with the Eliminators is that they only now, I believe, come in units of 3. So, you can't necessarily do much with that, but you do get 3 of these for 75 points. And then I think to give them the Las is an additional 5 points. So for 85 points, you could have 2 Las and the bolt and have a unit that's running around with, super mobile Las threat ranges, which is quite interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Intriguing. So there's that one. And you've already talked about the consolidate stuff. So that's basically all their abilities they get there. So I suppose, you're going to have that. You're going to have the Eliminators, not the Eliminators, we've done them. You're going to have the Infiltrators that are going to be hitting on 2s. Incursors, again, probably the Incursors aren't going to massively benefit from the +1 to hit. But then, it's ranged attack specifically. So you might want to lean into the Infiltrators there. And then I guess, is there a sort of benefit to any of the kind of characters? Probably not. Although again, maybe there's some play in Reavers with their assault bolt carbine things. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people go quite close combat centric with Reavers, but I think there is actually potentially quite a lot of interesting opportunities for them when you're running them with those bolt carbines, right?
Yeah, I guess the only downside is if you're using the grav shoots and you come from deep strike, you count as having moved your full movement, but I don't think you count as having done a normal move, which is what this specifies, although maybe you do. But I assume if you come down from deep strike, you won't get your +1 that turn.
Yeah, but I suppose it just becomes one of those things where it just becomes more about foot slogging and having a lot of infantry. To be fair, because you know, with the rule of 3 stipulations, I mean, the most expensive variant of eliminators is going to run you 85 points, which means that if you're taking 3 squads of those, you're barely breaking 250 for those specifically. So what's that, 85, which would then become 170 plus the 85. Yeah, so 255 for those 3 squads. So you still got a way to go before you hit that 2,000 point threshold.
Yeah, because I guess just from the outset, just from those restrictions, obviously you can take impulsors as like a way of getting across the board in relative safety. But in terms of your anti-tank firepower or even just in general anti-tank ability, you don't have much. You've only got the suppressors and the las fusils, really, in terms of the access of weapons that you can get. Everything else is very much anti-infantry sort of base.
So the Impulsor assault vehicle has just sort of piqued my interest, as has obviously the transport capacity, actually. So units embarked with this transport can disembark even if it made a normal move. Any unit disembarked after this transport had made a normal move cannot charge this turn. So again, super interesting, because the transport capacity of one of these things is 6. So you could get 2 units of eliminators inside the Impulsor. And then you could use the Impulsor's movement, which is
it 12?
14.
Oh, 14.
So you can get the 14-inch move, and then you can disembark within 3, move 6, shoot. So you're going to be able to get lines on things. You know, you're going to be able to get those decent shots off. You can then shoot your shots at that range, and then with the bolt thing, run away behind cover.
But only the sergeant can do the move. The whole squad can do it.
The whole unit moves.
That's quite got some legs then.
Yeah, because you can literally, so with the 6-inch move, well, so it's a 9-inch move plus the 14, so you're looking at flipping 23 inches of movement, which will probably get you aligned to something that you want dead. Admittedly, the las fusils are not like as powerful as las cannons. Obviously, it's not like you're dealing with you know, with the same sort of like power as a full-blown las cannon. They are flat damage free, but again, as Imperial Fist, that could be interesting, because in the first turn in the Devastator Doctrine, they are damage 4.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So you could probably do some interesting stuff with these guys as Imperial Fists, potentially.
True.
Which is a rare statement.
Well, so they don't gain the chapter tactic, but I guess they still get the super doctrine.
Yeah. Yeah, so turn 1, they'd still be benefiting from having the super doctrine. So you could actually, with those 2, I mean, you could take 3, you could take, you know, a bunch of them. And then obviously you could take like captains to run alongside them to give them the rerolling 1s. So you could potentially take a captain lieutenant combo and put them in a second. So you could have 2 impulsors, 3 units of those, and then a captain and a lefty. And you could basically have those in a prime position to do something. I mean, I'm, again, not naive enough to suggest that they're going to guarantee kill something. But for the sake of, I mean, how many points is an impulse these days? 85 or something like that?
Feels like that would be about correct.
So, I mean, hang on, I'll look it up. Impul. They are, 110 points. I'm quite off. So 220 for the impulsors plus some upgrades, call it 250. And then, as we've already established, 255 for for the eliminators, then chuck in some characters. I mean, all of a sudden, though, it doesn't seem too difficult to fulfill the points. But
yeah, it feels like a lot of effort to go to get some anti-tank in your list.
well,
but it will be good for what it is. And
the other thing though is the fact that you maybe don't even go las with them; you go sniper, because like one of the tricks that a lot of people do with their like major characters is try and hide them out of line of sight by being able to maneuver. But the fact that you're going to have that level of maneuverability will mean that you're going to potentially be able to get those lines. So you might be able to do a lot of headhunting early game.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is pretty important. So anyway, there you go. There's a bunch of ideas. Yeah. So should we talk about the relics?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's missing.
What's missing, Phil?
What's missing? Warlord traits. There aren't any. I can only assume it's because Phobos already have their own set of warlord traits in the Space Marine Codex.
Correct. Yes, they do. They do.
I mean, but it's still a bit odd that they haven't given you any here. I guess maybe that's why we've got this
but you can
Tools of the Vanguard instead.
But you can still get your warlord traits, though. So you could still get an Imperial Fist warlord trait or a...
Of course. But normally in all these armies of Renown, you get like... at least I'm sure you do. You get a couple of specific warlord traits for the theme of the army.
Yeah. It's pretty common that they would chuck in some warlord traits, but I guess they just didn't feel like it was necessary. They were like, you know what? Space Marines have got enough warlord traits. We don't need to give them even more. So relics, the first one is the Knight's Blade. A blade as dark as the night, I assume. Vanguard Spearhead models equipped with combat knife or paired combat blades only. This relic replaces a combat knife or paired combat blades and has the following profile. Melee, strength user, -3, 2 damage. Each time an attack is made with this weapon against a unit that is not a vehicle, an unmodified wound roll of 2+ is always successful.
Jeez, like monsters. Like literally going up against a titanic bio-titan. A squig off, whatever. Wound on 2+.
That's one heck of a knife.
Exactly. It's it's like that scene from Crocodile Dundee. It's like, that's not a knife. This is a knife.
No, that's a spoon. Oh, come on, Phil. You didn't complete it.
I don't get this reference.
Oh, come on, Phil. All right, I'll try it. You call that a knife? This is a knife. And then you say what I said.
That's something about a spoon?
That's a spoon, yeah.
That's a spoon. Is that...
I see you've played Knifey Spoony before.
I've got no idea what you're on about.
All right, fine. Don't worry about it. Tell us about the next one, Phil. It's a good knife. That's what we're getting.
Okay, right. Okay. The Armor Umbral. So this is Vanguard Spearhead model only. Each time a model makes an attack against the bearer, an unmodified hit roll of 1 to 3 fails, irrespective of any abilities. So it's a mini transhuman. Was that actual transhuman?
It's actual transhuman, yeah, because 1 to 3 is a fail.
The bearer is also eligible to charge in turn at which it advanced.
Very strong.
Yeah,
very strong. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. Shadow's Touch. Not the 80s gladiator. Very good at duel. You remember Shadow, Phil?
No, I was all about Jet.
Well, absolutely. As were we all. Although I was quite into Wolf as well.
if you say so.
Not in the way that you were into Jet, you understand, but more just from the kind of general showmanship perspective,
Of course.
Yeah, all right, fine. Don't you try and judge me for my
I'm not whatever you're into, that's fine. No
exactly. I'm into Wolf. That's how it is. Mm-hmm. What was his theme music again? It was just a Queen song, I assume.
Let's just carry on with the show.
All right, fine. This is the show, Phil. As much as you try and fight it, this is what this is. Vanguard Spearhead models equipped with a Force Sword. Oh, okay, so it's a relic that replaces a Force Sword. So Shadow's Touch, it is melee. It's strength +3, pretty meaningful. -4, yikes, and flat 2 damage, which is quite rare for force weapons because force weapons are typically D3 damage. So the fact that they've replaced that with a flat 2 damage is actually quite actually
It
good.
better ignore invuln saves so it can be part of a new hotness.
Well, let's find out. In your psychic phase, if the bearer manifests any psychic power from the obscuration discipline, which is their specific psychic
Phobos one.
discipline for Phobos, which is also in Codex Space Marines, not here. Then until the start of your next psychic phase, each time an attack is made with this weapon, invulnerable saves cannot be taken, Phil.
Ooh. Take that tail railgun.
Exactly.
We've got a sword.
I mean, here's the thing though: -4 flat T damage. I mean, the Phobos Librarian on a charge, I think, is going to be coming in at either 4 or 5 attacks. I think he might be 4 on profile, but it's highly likely he might only be 3 because he is still a Librarian. But, you know, yeah, the fact that you can ignore invuns is pretty meaningful. Obviously, the caveat is that you've got to take the specific psychic discipline and obviously have been successful with your psychic test. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to definitely do some work against some units.
Would he be good as a Raven Guard to get like that anti-character ability? So, because this guy ignoring invuln saves is really going to be good at, or most suitable, killing other characters.
Yes, yeah, that's really where he's going to come into his own, isn't it? But then I suppose, yeah, he's going to have to manage to get, 3 wounds off on your average character to see it done. And if we assert that he's got 4 attacks, that might be quite difficult. But I guess if he is rocking with 5 attacks, that's quite plausible, especially at strength +3, because he's only strength 7, so he's going to be hitting on, I think Librarians hit on 3s. Either that he's hitting on 2s or he's hitting on 3s, either way, and then he's wounding on 3s in most kind of character matchups. So 3s follow 3s. It's feasible that he could do 3 wounds. I mean, it'll be very strong. It'll be very strong against Autarchs and Archons. Any of the.
You're right. He just so he does hit on 3s for both weapon skill and ballistic skill.
What? How many attacks has he got?
4.
Oh, he has. So he's got 5 attacks at least. So he's hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, unless of course he's up against something Aeldari, in which case he's wounding on 2s. So yeah, it definitely could be useful if you're seeing a lot of elder characters doing the rounds. The fact that you could run up to a Farseer and just be like, "Nah, mate," and slice him in half is pretty meaningful. So yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess normally you could always take Null Zone to ignore invulnerable saves.
Yes.
But yeah, this way is a bit more of an interesting way of doing it because it doesn't cancel out invuln saves that you might have in your army.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. What's the last one, Phil?
Morbidus Bolts. So this is Vanguard Spearhead model only. You can give this model the relic, select 1 bolt weapon, see Codex Space Marine, that this model is equipped with. When that model is chosen to shoot with, you can choose for the weapon to fire a Morbidus Bolt. If you do so, you only make 1 attack with that weapon, but if you score a hit, the target suffers 2 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends, and until the end of the turn, subtract 1 from combat attrition tests taken for that unit. Which might combo well with Reavers, potentially, because Reavers have some leadership debuffs, don't they?
Yeah, it's the fact that, I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, the fact that you're doing 2 mortal wounds is pretty decent, but yeah, when the attack sequence ends, but I suppose that's fair in this instance.
I mean, there's plenty of examples, Tower Railgun, for example, where you do mortal wounds in addition to your normal attack sequence. I mean,
that was what I was thinking, yes.
But there are quite a lot of examples where you also do mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends because they're like, no, that's all you do.
Yes.
It also speeds it up, I guess. You're just doing your flat 2 damage and that's it.
It's very easy not to notice those stipulations sometimes and find yourself obviously gaining the advantage of both damage and the mortal wounds. But I guess that's just, the human error of Warhammer 40,000 sometimes. But yeah, I mean, it's all right. I'd say, for me, I think the Nightblade's pretty reasonable, and the armor of Umbral is definitely got something to be said for it. And I think you can situationally understand that there are opportunities for Shadow's Touch. But
I mean, it sounds very cool, and I like how you got to power up your sword.
Yeah, I like Shadow's
with psychic power. Yeah.
Well, it's like the old force weapons, because before you actually had to do one of your psychic powers to imbue your force weapons with force powers. So it used to be in older editions that you used to have to do a psychic test to basically make your force weapon an instant death weapon.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. In fact, actually, no, it wasn't how it worked. You did the attack, and then if the wound went through, then you did the psychic test to see if it became instant death, if I remember correctly. Either way, the point is that yeah, it's interesting. So we've got some tools of the Vanguard.
So this is just a way of upgrading your squads, because they say you can have specialist pieces of equipment, and they're usually given to the specialists within the squad. So you've got Infiltrator Squad or Incursor Squad. So for the Infiltrator Squad, if your army is a Vanguard Spearhead, then when you're mustering your army, you can upgrade models within the Infiltrator Squad units with the following war gear options. So one Infiltrator that is not equipped with a Helix Gauntlet. Helix Gauntlet. Infiltrator Comms Array or Vox Breaker Auspex can be equipped with one Saboteur Explosive Pack, and one Infiltrator that is not equipped with the Helix Gauntlet, Comms Array or Saboteur Explosive Pack can be equipped with one Vox Breaker Auspex. So there's your two optional war gear pieces. So the Saboteur Explosive Pack gives you the Saboteur Explosive Pack keyword. The Vox Breaker gives you the Vox Breaker Auspex keyword, which no doubt will have two stratagems tied to it. Which
I would say so. On the Incursor side of things, one Incursor that is not equipped with a Haywire Mine can be equipped with one Marksman Target Tracker. And that gives you the Marksman Target Tracker keyword. So let's get on to some stratagems, shall we?
Yeah.
Are we going to do all of them?
We always do.
We always do when it's a little one, don't we? Because
exactly.
you gotta pad it out. So, all right, fine. A storm of death, Phil. Not too dissimilar to the storms that were raging at the UK. Although, fortunately, it seemed relatively non-lethal in that regard. But we all enjoyed watching jumbo jets landing at Heathrow, didn't we, Phil?
Exactly. I did survive. I did not crush anyone with my shed.
Not this time. Anyway, a storm of death. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Vanguard Spearhead Reaver Squad unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack against an infantry or biker unit, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage, to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. So there you go. Pretty reasonable.
Not bad for 1 CP.
Certainly not bad at all. I mean, at the end of the day, you got yourself a nice little Reaver squad. You're going all, hard in the paint, as they say. So yeah, there you go. A storm of death.
Cool. The next one is Ocular Networking for 1 CP. Use a stratagem in the shooting phase or the fight phase when a Vanguard Spearhead unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight. Until the end of that phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, an unmodified wound roll of 6 improves the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 2. And it specifies this is cumulative with bonuses gained from the Combat Doctrine's ability.
Handy dandy.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, getting an extra AP. Well, as we said, they don't really have much stuff that is anti-tank. So having this stratagem to basically potentially make bolters -3 in the tactical doctrine, that makes it really good. You obviously still got to wound them though. That's the problem.
Well, indeed. I mean, yeah, but still, not bad. We've then got the dispersal protocols. It's a 2 CP strategic ploy stratagem. Use this stratagem at the end of the fight phase. Select one Vanguard Spearhead unit from your army that is within engagement range of enemy units. That unit can fall back as if it were your movement phase. Again, very, very useful, to be fair. The ability to fall back as if it's your movement phase is pretty meaningful. So,
especially if it's not your turn and it's your turn coming up, so you haven't fallen back in your turn, so you can, when it is your turn, you're at liberty to do something else with that squad. It's pretty cool.
There you go. Nice. Next one, mate.
Next one is War Gear Stratagems. So this is the Saboteur Explosive Pack. It's 1 CP. So use a stratagem when a Saboteur Explosive Pack keyword unit from your army is selected to fall back. Before the unit moves, select one enemy vehicle or monster that is within engagement range of the unit and roll 1d6, adding 3 to the result if the enemy unit is a building unit. On a 2 to 5, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On a 6+, the enemy unit suffers D6 mortal wounds.
I mean, that's pretty meaningful.
You're going to blow up some buildings.
Quite possibly. And also, though, it specifically states when you've selected a fallback, so you can do this as part of your dispersal protocols as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of CP.
That's free CP, yeah, but it's a nice way to say goodbye, isn't it? When you're falling back.
It's a bit cheeky, yeah.
Cheeky. chuck a mine at it, and again, it
basically means you can do it sort of twice. Like if you're in combat, do it at the end of their turn, charge in your turn, do it again then.
Nice.
Just constantly be falling back
all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. And that was specifically an infiltrator squad ability, right? We didn't sort of specify that, but just in case you didn't remember from moments ago, that is the infiltrator variant. The next one is
one of the two.
One of the two. The next one is Voxbreaker Auspex, which is also the second of the infiltrator ones. It's a war gear stratagem. It's 1 CP. Use the stratagem in your command phase. Select one enemy unit within 18 of the Voxbreaker Auspex unit from your army until the start of your next turn. Each time a model in that enemy unit makes a ranged attack, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. If that unit declares a charge, you can select one unit from your army that is a target of that charge to hold steady or set to defend. So there you go. Look, I mean, the fact that you can effectively give -1 to hit to a unit within 18 of a unit that ultimately will, quite comfortably be within 18 inches, given its, infiltrating credentials, is okay. The hold steady or set to defend side of things is what it is. But it's all right. It's not bad. I mean, I'm not entirely sure I'll be falling over myself to take it, but it seems like there's no points associated with adding these unit upgrades, so it might be situational. And if I've got the CP, why not, eh?
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, getting like a universal -1 on any unit of your opponent for a turn is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it certainly reduces the efficiencies of certain lethal units, like hammerheads, for example. Reduce those to 5 to hit. Oh, they'll feel that. Although, again, most of them will be long strikes, so they won't care. But, the point is that for the rare instances when one of them isn't long strike, you'll stick it to them.
I mean, but what's a hammerhead going to do? Oh, it's got the mortal wounds stratagem, hasn't it, on your infantry?
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does have that feel, yeah.
The next one is Marksman Target Tracker for 2 CP. So this is the one that works on the Incursor squad. Use a stratagem in your shooting phase when a Marksman Target Tracker unit from your army is selected to shoot until the end of the phase. Each time you select a target for the Oculus Bolt Carbine, a model in that unit is equipped with, you can ignore the lookout server rule. Oh, that's pretty good. So you can shoot away with your characters.
2 CP though, pretty hefty price, but a valuable output.
Yeah.
There you go. Then we've got the tactical augury,
yeah.
Augury. Okay, we're going with that. 1 CP, it's a war gear stratagem. Use the stratagem in your shooting phase when a Vanguard Spearhead unit from your army is selected to shoot until the end of the phase. Each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, the target does not receive the benefits of cover against that attack. For 1 CP, you're all right, mate. I mean, but it's all right, But yeah, I'm not too overwhelmed with that one.
Well, if they're in woods, so they're getting a cover save and dense, that's a double whammy that you're ignoring.
That's true. I suppose that is the one instance, I suppose, when they're in that dense cover or in that difficult ground or whatever it is, then fair enough. The last is yours, Phil? Tell us what it is.
It is your favourite one, and it is the pooey brown colour. It is the
It is.
pivotal moments for 2 CP. It's an epic deed stratagem. Use a stratagem in your shooting phase when a Vanguard Spearhead core model from your army is selected to shoot. Notice it's model, not a unit. Until the end of the phase, each time that model makes a ranged attack against an enemy warlord, a successful wound roll inflicts a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon used for that attack, and the attack sequence ends.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
Are you trying to think of a weapon that would do an adequate amount of mortal wounds now?
Well, yes, but I was wondering. So you can apply it to a model in a unit, so it's not specifically. Well, in fact, it can't be characters because it's core.
Yeah.
And it's only when you shoot, so it's not close combat.
Yeah. So realistically, within the lineup of options that are available to you, the best option is going to be one of the eliminators, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
So
Because that's
effectively,
doing what damage does it do?
well, so technically, and this is an interesting one, right? So if you were Imperial Fists and you had a las fusel thing, technically your strength 8 weapon, which means that you get +1 to your damage. I'd be intrigued to know what the interaction is at that point, though, when that damage is then converted to mortal wounds. Is it based on the profile of the weapon, or is it based on the amplified kind of whole damage characteristic?
Well, here it specifically says damage characteristic of the weapon.
Fine.
So I would
in
assume
that instance, it would be free,
not.
right?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing: is +1 damage +1 to the damage characteristic of the weapon, which it could well be, as opposed to +1 damage on top afterwards. So we'd have to check for rules for the wording of how that works. Yeah, so it could go either way, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the fact that the attack sequence ends. It's not that good. Unless I'm missing something. The fact that that's 2 CP is not setting my world on fire.
Well, here's the thing. You've got to successfully wound it. So basically, you're ignoring them doing their save. You're ignoring an invuln save. You're not ignoring the feel no pain. But basically, if you're up against something with an invuln save and you're not trying to kill them in close combat with your spooky shadow touch knife sword that your librarian's got, then it's just a way of circumventing the invuln save, really.
Yeah, but I just sort of trying to work out what weapon do these guys have? Like, what weapon does a single core model have that is going to do significant amounts of damage? I'm just looking up the tactical war suit for a second. It's not core, so fine. So you can't do it with the tactical war suit. I was pretty sure that wasn't core. So yeah, so who's got a gun that's going to really make any difference?
What about one of the suppressors?
Suppressors we've already established you can't take.
Oh yeah, you can. Suppressors.
But they're not Phobos.
No, but you can have.
Oh, but they get included.
Or suppressor.
Oh right, okay. Well, there we go. Okay, fine. But they're damaged too.
Yeah, but how many shots do you do though?
Okay.
Is it not like 3 shots?
Oh, hang on. I'm looking them up. Why is my brain failing me today, Phil?
I don't know. You tell me. Hold on.
I think it's more the app being utterly rubbish. I should just go onto Warpedia, but there we are. Anyway, the point is, whatever it is, I don't think there's ever going to be a single core unit that's going to be valuable enough to make this worth 2 CP.
Hold on. Suppressor squads are core, and the gun accelerator autocannon heavy 3, strength 7 -1 2 damage. So max damage 6. 6
Yeah.
mortal wounds you could potentially do, which isn't too bad. And
I mean,
it is minus 1 AP, so the ability to reduce their save isn't very good. So turning that to mortal wounds would be quite useful.
Noting that it's successful wound rolls though as well, right? Like, so you still have to wound with it.
Yeah, but you're strength 7, so it's not against a character as well. Well, not necessarily against character. It will be because against a warlord, which is very specific. It's like against Gaz, for example, or the character Dread from Iron Hands or Minotaurs, for example. Might not be very. In fact, the Minotaurs one can't be the warlord, so forget that. There's your little Minotaurs reference. I told you. Yeah, so I mean, against those things, not very good. But most characters are obviously, toughness 3, toughness 4, toughness 5 at a push. So it should do a decent job. But yeah, even for 2 CP, you're probably going to do on average 4 mortal wounds, maybe with your suppressor if you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, the suppressor is literally like the only thing that, like, maybe.
And here's the thing: you still need to be able to shoot the warlord as well, because you don't have anything unless you also the suppressor can't do this, but unless you're doing the marksman target tracker, which is also 2 CP, you can't ignore lookout sir any other way unless you were to like tack into, I guess, Vanguard or some of the snipers.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason why I could fathom that they made that stratagem 2 CP is because there's some future-proofing scenario that they were evaluating for that made that make sense. But I think right now, like, every single relic worth taking that will do decent damage output, either you can't take on these models or doesn't matter anyway because they're going to go on characters which don't have the core keyword. So there's no relics that are really going to come into effect from this, except for maybe some of the sergeant upgrade war gear stratagems that you can do. Maybe there's some play in a sergeant war gear stratagem somewhere that I'm missing, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. And then every single one of their core models, with the exception of the eliminators, as we've established, and then the suppressors are like damage 1 or damage 2. So suppressors damage 2, everything else is damage 1. Admittedly, they've got a load of shots, and the shots can become more wounds, but there's just no immediately obvious synergy to me for why that needs to be 2 CP. But then maybe I'm missing something, as is often the way.
Yeah, if it was a unit, it would make perfect sense. Or if
it'd be too good almost at that point. Well, yes. Right?
Well, then it would have to be capped at like the 6 mortal wounds, like the Storm of Death. If it was Vanguard,
even at 6 more wounds, though, it would be crazy good because so often you'd be like, how many wounds that character got? 6. Cool. Here's 3 eliminators with bolt rifles.
True. Yeah, it sort of feels like they changed it from an enemy unit to an enemy warlord, or they changed it from Vanguard Spearhead keywords to core keyword and kept the 2 CP in there. Yeah, I guess the weird one is maybe they've gone, we don't want to, even with the mortal wounds, instant kill a character, even though it's kind of the point of an epic deed. They've toned it down because there isn't actually, as you say, many weapons that can do a lot of damage. So you can get 6 mortal wounds max from the autocannon on the suppressor if you're very lucky. Yeah.
4 you could. Well, here's the thing, right? Because technically, isn't the suppressor gun strength 7 and thus meeting the Imperial Fist stipulation as well? So potentially you could do 9.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now we're cooking.
Now we're cooking.
Go. That's worth 2 CP, 9 mortal wounds.
Yeah. I mean, that is worth 2 CP. Fair play there. But
again, that's only as Imperial Fists.
Yes, and assuming that that's how the Imperial Fist super doctrine works with this, which we don't know. So, look, I mean, all things being equal, it's fun that they've given the Phobos some extra guff. I would love to see them do this for Gravis. I think that would be cool.
Oh, yeah, I love me some Gravis. Sign me up. I would
Gravis
say
are a bit lacking in characters, though, weirdly, because they've only got the captain variant.
they got two No, they've got 3 captains in Gravis armor now. One of which
they do actually. Yeah,
one of which is a redo of effectively of an older one, and then the other one is I've just got a bolt rifle version,
which is the best one still,
isn't it?
in my opinion? Yeah, because it's got the power sword and the heavy bolt rifle.
I
think I still think that's the best one.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. I mean, it would be cool to see what they would do. With I mean, this is, as you said, it's fun, but it doesn't feel very good.
I don't know if it's not very good. I just think the thing is with it, I think the tricks with it are there. I just think, again, it feels to me that they could have given you the storm speeders. Like, that's the thing that I'm a bit like, come on, guys.
Well, again, because would they be cool? No, they wouldn't, because they're vehicles, right?
They're vehicles, yeah. So I don't think they're cool. But
I mean, if you could put pivotal moment on them, then yeah, worth the 2 CP.
Oh, totally.
Because of the guns that they've got.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But obviously,
it feels like they're lacking some fundamental stuff like anti-tank, anti-monster type firepower. There's a couple of stratagems that try and fix that, but you've got to fall back to be able to do your explosive pack detonation. Is like having the land speeders in there would have really fixed that problem with the general issue with the army build. Because they just don't have other units unless you take a ton of suppressors, basically, or the las fusils.
But that's the thing, even with like the suppressors, right? I mean, how many points is a suppressor squad? 100 points. So at that point, here we go. What are they going to be, Phil? I think they're bang on 100, but then they might have changed recently.
You'd have to do maths. It's 33 points per model, so 66 for 2 plus 34 for the sergeant. So that's like what, 100?
100.
Yeah,
because 66 plus 34 is 100.
Yeah.
Maths. There you go. Maths coming at you like Cleopatra. Yeah. So I think the because that's the thing. Like, free suppressor squads is 300 points. 3 units of eliminators, as we've established, is 255. So you've gotten to 555 points by taking the maximum quantity of that stuff.
You'd also probably have to take 3 war suits as well.
Yeah, 3 war suits. How much is the old war suit? So the Invicta Tactical War Suit. That is a whopping 160 points. Any particular gear on that? So, 3 of those will set you back 480 points.
And then you've got 500 to 1,000 points, depending on what size game you're playing, for all your inventory.
Yeah, so you got once you've taken everything you could possibly take of the extra stuff, you've got 1,000 points of characters and troops.
I mean, that's not easy to do in a 2,000 point game. Like, you've got to literally take everything.
Yeah,
and as you said, you can only get the suppressors in either the original. What was it called? The box set, Shadow Spear, or the Combat Patrol. But yeah, obviously you could take, your captains, your lieutenants, and your librarians as well, which could potentially, depending on how many you're taking. You could take, if you're taking 3, that's going to be another 300-400.
I don't know, but I still don't understand why you'd be taking the captain. I understand that obviously because Phobos, blah blah blah, and you'd have to take him but like the Phobos captain is by far and away the worst captain Space Marines have.
I mean, wouldn't it be nice if they gave him a special warlord trait that made him good?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be awesome? But they didn't. I suppose I don't even know if he's got I don't even know if you can give him the Night Blade, because I don't think he comes with paired combat blades or a combat blade. I think he might have a combat blade, but he's got like a bolt.
That seems likely.
Yeah, but he's easily the worst of the Primaris captains by far. So yeah, he's a bit of a. So you probably just lean into a lieutenant and a librarian, probably.
Yeah, he does have a combat knife, so he can.
Oh, fine. So you can give him
it.
You can give them the Knight's Blade. Fine. I mean, maybe. But, like, yeah, as I say, I think, you know, once you've added him, once you've added a lieutenant, you're probably only still then talking, you know, maybe 170 points of characters there. And then even with the librarian chucked into the mix, I guess you're looking at, you know, 250-ish, or not 250-ish, sorry, that'd be 270-ish. I suppose you could spend on making him a chapter master and then upgrading the librarian to a chief librarian.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So maybe that'll get you to, you know, then you'll be, you know, needing to still spend about 700 points on infantry.
Which is sort of the theme of the whole point of the Vanguard Spearheads, like just lots of infantry sneaking around and stuff. You'll probably want to take some Reavers, because if you're playing Phobos, you'll think Reavers are cool.
Oh,
Reavers
yeah,
are cool, so you'd have to
Reavers
take
are in
them.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. So you could add, and they're OBSEC now, aren't they?
And they're OBSEC, so that does make them slightly better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
you
you
could add
got
in-
some maneuverability with them.
How many points is a Reaver now? There's a question I've never thought I'd ask. Reaver squads, they are 18 points a go. It's 180 points for 10 Reavers. Plus there's a bunch of upgrade things you can put on them. So say 20 points a model once you've done some upgrades. So 200 points for them. So yeah, you could have 3 squads of 10 Reavers, you know, and all the other stuff we mentioned. And then I guess you need to then work out what you're going to do about troops. Because I suppose at this point, you probably, in order to have fielded this list that we've just mentioned, you're going to have probably had to have gone with a Vanguard list of some sort, because you'd have 6 elite choices, 3 heavy, 3 fast. Yeah, there you go.
It's funny because this is literally called a Vanguard Spearhead. It's like they thought of everything.
Well, exactly. What they should have done is given Vanguard detachments a CP refund, just to have made it more sensible.
Yes, indeed.
But you know you're in a bit of a bad spot with something where you're actually legitimately having a conversation about, can you get Reavers into it, and are they actually good? Because I think the answer often is with Reavers that they're not good. We know they're not good.
Well, there's one specific stratagem form, which is the Storm of Death, so they can do mortal wounds.
Yes, yeah, and obviously they're OBSEC, which is pretty meaningful for them as well. And then obviously they've got the whole +1 to hit when they're moving, which again, if you're going with the bolt carbines, could be interesting. But yeah, I think the bulk of it is the fact that they're OBSEC, I guess, which is all right. I don't hate it by any stretch of the imagination, and I think someone out there would definitely love to collect this. I think Joe's actually doing it, isn't he?
Oh yeah, so he's doing a Raven Guard Phobos army. So I assume he's doing it with this Vanguard Spearhead in mind. I think he's just doing it because it's cool, regardless of whether these rules are any good or not.
Yeah, I think, well, Joe's definitely gone that side after he'd sort of ironically, left Vanguard, with the Vanguard theme. I think he's kind of just been burned out on competitive, so he's just kind of gone full on whatever when it comes to this stuff now, which is fair play to him, to be fair, because I can appreciate it. It can be a bit much.
It's the way to do it.
Certainly seems that way. But there you go. Closing thoughts, Phil. Tell me what you think, mate.
It's a 1 thumb up, not a 2 thumb up. It's good, but is nowhere near as good as some of the other armies of renown that we've seen before. So yeah, it's okay. Like, missing warlord traits, in my opinion, my humble opinion. The overall benefits don't really seem to outweigh the restrictions on what you can't take. And as you say, if the land speeders was in there, it would feel a lot more viable. But with that missing, only 1 part.
There you go. It's no crushing stampede or whatever. Crusher stampede, sorry.
Oh God, yeah, and that was just in a white dwarf, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, there we go. We're going to move on now to whatever it is we do next, which I think will be the sisters, but who knows? Transitional noise. Woo! Welcome back, everyone. In this part of the podcast, we're going to talk about Codex Supplement Order of the Bloody Rose. Them being one of those there, Adeptus Sororitas thingamabibs. What are the Adeptus Sororitas thingamabibs again, Phil? They're orders?
Yes, orders, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the clue was in the name.
Or order convictions is the, you know, what they refer to in terms of the rules that they have.
Fair enough. But what is Order of the Bloody Rose, Phil? I have never heard of them.
Well, if you want a law answer, I can't actually give it to you. But
Well, they're like a sister thing, right? Like, you know, angry, I assume.
well, yes. So in fact, you are spot on. Their army bonus is called Quick to Anger. If I just read the flavor text for one moment, it says, once their battle fury is roused, none prosecute the wars of the Adeptus Ministorum with greater fervor than those warriors who belong to the Order of the Bloody Rose. So yes, angry and I guess righteous. And how is it that is represented in terms of rules? So each time a unit with this conviction fights, if it made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention this turn, then until the fight is resolved, add 1 to the attacks characteristics of that unit. And each time a model with this conviction makes a melee attack, if that model's unit made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention, increase the armor penetration characteristic by 1. So +1 attack, +1 AP in summary.
Pretty tasty. A popular choice, I'm sure, for all those there melee focused,
Exactly.
sister players.
Choppy.
So, what do they get as a Codex supplement? What extra things are they being given access to, Phil?
Unlike the Phobos Spearhead, Vanguard Spearhead, they get Warlord traits. They also get 3 of your relics, and they get a bunch of stratagems.
Magical. All right. Well, then let's get to talking. First of all, we have the Warlord traits, and the first that we've got is the Fiery Example. Each time this Warlord makes a melee attack against a character unit, add 1 to the attack's wound roll. Each time this Warlord destroys an enemy character until a unit... I thought it said until for some reason. I went a bit mad. You gain 2 miracle dice. It's pretty good. Pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Even though your brain broke reading it out.
Yeah, but it's held together with sellotape. To be fair,
yeah.
Or sticky back plastic, I suppose as you're supposed to say. Don't be brand specific.
Exactly. The next one is Incandescent Reprisal. Each time this warlord would lose a wound on a roll of d6, the wound is not lost. Once per phase after an enemy unit shoots or fights, if this warlord suffered any wounds as a result of those attacks, if the warlord is not within engagement range of the enemy unit, this warlord can shoot with 1 ranged weapon it is equipped with. It can only target the enemy unit when doing so, and only if the enemy unit is an eligible target. Also, if this unit is within engagement range of an enemy unit and has not already been selected to fight during this phase, it can immediately be selected to fight. It can only target the enemy unit when doing so, and only if the enemy unit is an eligible target. Does that mean if you haven't yet fought, you can select it to fight and then fight again later? Or is it basically, if you have been charged by multiple units, you can effectively get a free intervention? And you're still only fighting once, but you're jumping the queue, so to speak.
Yeah, let's just read it one last time. So the whole thing about 5-up shrugging off wound rolls is pretty reasonably understood, right? So once per phase. So obviously a phase is any one of the phases, not the turn specifically. So movement, shooting, blah, 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 blah. After an enemy unit shoots or fights. So by the broad assertion, that would be the shoot and or fight phases that this would be taking place. If this warlord suffers any wounds as a result of those attacks, if this warlord is not within engaged range of any enemy units, this warlord can shoot with 1 ranged weapon it is equipped with. It can only target that enemy unit when doing so, and only if that enemy unit is an eligible target.
Makes
so when it's
sense.
Yeah, that's straightforward enough. And then if this warlord is within engagement range of an enemy unit, it has not already been selected to fight during this phase, it can immediately be selected to fight. it can only target the enemy unit doing so, and only if that enemy unit is in engagement range. So I suppose here's the way I look at it. Obviously, if you're being shot in the shooting phase and you're not in engagement range, you will be allowed to shoot. If you get shot with pistols in the shooting phase while in engagement range, you will then be able to fight, but you are fighting in the shooting phase. Therefore, you then move into a new charge, then subsequent fight phase, whereby which you could, in theory, activate again, I would assert. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, do you know what? It's weird that they've not said it can be selected to fight as if it were the fight phase. I don't think they thought about pistols when they've worded this, and they've only assumed it's you're shooting in sorry, not shooting in combat, you're only fighting in the fight phase. Because how can you be selected to fight if it's not the fight phase?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But I think the broader sort of side of this is that at the end of the day, the way the rule's written is if you're taking a wound in a phase and you're in engagement range of the thing that caused the wound, which can happen with pistols, then you fight.
Yeah, it's weird. The reason why I say it's weird is normally, so the Astartes banner, when you die, you can fight once if you're in the fight phase. Or sorry, if you've died in combat or you're in engagement range, you can fight once with one attack. If you can shoot with one weapon. So it's very similar. But this one doesn't say you can just attack once. It says you're just able to select your unit to fight only if you haven't already fought. So if you've already fought, then you've been attacked, doesn't do anything. If you haven't yet fought and there's only 2 of you in the combat, you're going to fight next anyway. So it doesn't do anything else. It doesn't allow you. It seems like you can't fight twice, and that's very deliberate. So it feels pretty pointless overall because there's only a couple of occasions where you're in multiple units. Sorry, you're in multiple combats against several units. Then you get effectively a free intervention, which is sort of feels like what it does, which is a bit niche as a thing. Ultimately, I'm just running around, you shoot at me, I shoot you back, feels the more interesting one of the two.
Yeah. Oh, well, there we go. That was a lot of old nonsense. We'll talk about the last one of the warlord traits, which is the red-handed castigator. Each time you gain a miracle dice, see Codex Adeptus Sororitas, but basically there's a bunch of specific stipulations whereby which a miracle dice is earned. Martyrdom, for example, if you lose a character, you gain a miracle dice. If you kill characters, you gain a miracle dice. And if you do various other heroic deeds or acts of martyrdom, these miracle dice are rewarded accordingly. But yeah, so if you have done that at the end of the phase as a result of the vengeance ability, if this warlord destroys an enemy unit during the phase, that miracle dice is automatically a 6, which is pretty important because obviously the miracle dice mechanic is used to replace dice rolls, or rather being used instead of dice rolls. So you essentially go, rather than rolling the dice, I will say that I rolled a 6 in this instance, where you have been rewarded with a 6, which is quite useful.
So the vengeance ability is basically when one of your units destroys one of your enemy units. The other one is sacrifice when one of your characters dies, as you said.
Indeed. And then lastly, you've got each time this warlord makes a melee attack, if this warlord made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention this turn, you can re-roll that attack's hit rolls. So there we go. Look, here's the thing. None of these warlord traits are as good as the one where you basically take a bunch of wounds and then do mortal wounds with your attacks. That is by far and away the most crazy. Or that's not even a warlord trait, is it? That's a relic, actually, now that I think about it. That's the sword of mortal wound madness.
Oh, yeah, I can't quite remember.
It's definitely a relic, actually, yeah. So, okay, fair enough. Well, maybe there's some interesting play with that then, potentially. So, there we go. Not a bad selection, not necessarily leaping off the page at me, but, certainly some interesting stuff in there. Let's get into those relics, Phil. Tell me about the first one.
So it's Mina's Wrath.
Oh.
Model equipped with a power sword only. Basically, you get the Mina's Wrath instead. So it's a melee weapon. +2 strength, -3 AP, 2 damage, and each time the bear makes an attack with his weapon on an unmodified wound roll of 6, the target suffers 2 mortal wounds. And guess what? The attack sequence ends.
Yep, there we go. Which is, all right. I mean, the fact that it's strength +2, -3, and 2 damage is, not without merit. And the fact that you're getting those mortal wounds off as well, or in addition to, or not in addition to, instead of. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, you're already -3, so it's a bit niche. Basically, again, just to ignore M-buns, it seems.
Yeah. The next one is the Armor of True Sacrifice. It's Order of the Bloody Rose models only, if that wasn't, a surprise to you. The bearer has a saving characteristic of 2+, pretty decent. If the bearer loses 1 or more wounds during a phase, at the end of that phase, you gain 1 miracle dice.
Tasty.
Yeah, it's not bad.
The next one is Icon of the Crimson Martyr. So you get to add 1 to the bearer's wound characteristics. The bearer's Litany of Deeds ability has the following additional tail. Which
you
can
get an additional tail.
Get
Lovely.
an extra story, which can be selected instead of the ones listed on the bearer's datasheet. So, Tale of the Martyr. At the end of any phase, other than the morale phase, in which any friendly Order of the Bloody Rose core units were within 6 inches of the bearer were destroyed, you gain 1 miracle dice. This is in addition to any other miracle dice gained at the end of the phase in which a character unit was destroyed. So, yeah, an extra way of getting miracle dice. There's a bit of a theme going on here about miracle dice.
Well, it is one of the kind of core concepts of their army, so it does kind of check out, doesn't it?
Indeed.
All right. They've got a bunch of stratagems. We're going to read them all, as is the formula for these smaller rules thingies. So let's get into it. We've got the blues first, Phil. The blues, the battle tactic stratagems. First of those is Scourge of the Penitent. It is a 1 or potentially 2 CP stratagem. Use the stratagem in your command phase. Select 1 Order of the Bloody Rose Repentia Superior model from your army and 1 Sister Repentia unit within 6 of that model. Until the end of the turn, add 1 to the charge rolls made for that Sister's Repentia unit. If the Sister Repentia unit contains 5 or fewer models, the stratagem costs 1 CP. Otherwise, it costs 2 CP. I mean, 2 CP for +1 to charge.
I think it's junk.
I mean, that's awful, isn't it?
If it was +2, fair enough. If it was re-roll your charges, fair enough. But I mean, +1 just seems a bit rubbish.
It's utterly uninspiring, isn't it? It's like, okay, cool. I mean, that's just what Blood Angels have all the time, and Blood Angels are considered really bad.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one.
I'd say it's more than a bit of a weird one. I'd say it's really bad.
Do they need it? Do they need the +1? Maybe they've gone +2's too much because they're a good unit, right? So just make it +1.
Here is the thing. Had they gone with you do it in the charge phase, you roll your dice, and for 2 CP, you add 1, but you know that you needed that 1.
Yeah.
Fine. Because that's really, really clutch. The amount of times where you need a 9 and you roll an 8 or 7 and you roll a 6, like it happens a lot. Like the idea that you could just go, cool, I'll pay the 2 CP to add 1 to this result.
Yeah.
That's worth it because it's really meaningful. Because at the end of the day, you're weighing up the consequences. Do I re-roll for 1 CP or do I just guarantee my charge for 2 CP?
Well, I guess if you're using miracle dice, you could be like, oh, I'm going to use a 6 already, so I know 1's great. I'm just going to add +1 to that in addition to whatever else
Well,
I roll for the
Well,
second
that's the crazy
dice.
thing with the miracle dice system. It's basically like these units, these sisters have never had an issue getting into combat. So the whole thing is just, and the fact you have to do it in your command phase, it's like, and
God, yeah,
that was my point. Do it in the command phase, and the stipulation is you have to have one of these, Repentia superiors within range of them as well. It's like, so for God's sakes, like. This has got 1 CP all over it, if it even needs to be 1 CP. I mean, honestly, I'd say 0 CP.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It's like if you're doing a long charge, if you're doing a 9-inch charge, is this going to help? Statistically, no, because you're going to roll 7 and it's going to turn it to an 8. So unless you're in a very rare situation where in the command phase, I guess you must have pre-measured to know how much you're moving, and you then go, I need an 8-inch charge. That is the only time statistically you would want to use a stratagem.
It's terrible. And for 2 CP, I mean, and almost always as a Sisters player, you've probably got that, 6 miracle dice chilling. So you got to know anyway. Like, basically at that point, you're like, well, now all I need to do is roll a 2+, and I'm in. It's like, no, it's terrible. I mean, I wouldn't say it's worth 0 CP, but I wouldn't say it's worth 0 CP, but it is worthless, if you know what I mean. Like, it just doesn't need to exist. It's bad. What's the next one, Phil?
Next one is Wade into the Foe for 1 CP. Use a stratagem in your fight phase. Select one Order of the Bloody Rose Paragon Warsuits unit from the army that has made a charge move this turn. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit that contains 6 or more models at the start of the phase, an unmodified hit roll of 4+ scores 1 additional hit. Now, that's pretty tasty.
I mean, that feels like a 1 CP strat right there.
I mean, it's maybe better than a 1 CP. Maybe better than 1 CP, but it's pretty good. It's a bit niche. Obviously, you've got to have 6 or more models. It's a good, like, sweeping blade type attack ability to give yourself more attacks. And the fact that Paragon Warsuits, I believe, overall, people tend to think they're a bit underwhelming. So any stratagems that boost them up is good in my book.
Yeah, totally. Clear the flanks, Phil. Clear those flanks. Use the stratagem at the start of your shooting phase. Select one enemy unit that is within 6 inches of a battlefield edge that is not a player's battlefield edge. Until the end of the phase, each time an Order of the Bloody Rose model makes an attack with a heavy weapon that targets that enemy unit, reroll a wound roll of 1. Okay. So reroll wound rolls of 1 against an enemy that is within 6 inches of a battlefield edge. All right, fair enough.
I mean, it is clearing the flanks. It is doing what it says. Very niche sort of thing. If you're up against a Vanguard, Spearhead, armies of Renown that's going to have lots of Reavers coming in from the sides, maybe. Then, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. But people do, come on from, side edges. So it's a thing. It's a thing.
Well, there you go. Oh, there's an extra bit here as well, Phil, that you have to pat your head and rub your belly when you're simultaneously when you cast this stratagem. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
The clear the flanks one.
Yes, yeah. Extra stipulations. I'm just adding a few extra little bits to it.
Oh, right, yeah, because
you have to twiddle your mustache, maintain eye contact. It's all a thing. Anyway, next one, mate.
We're back to the epic deeds. Your favorite color, Outrage of the Matriarch. For 1 CP, use a stratagem in the fight phase when the Order of Bloody Rose character model from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of that phase, each time the model makes an attack that targets an enemy model with a wounds characteristic that exceeds its own. Okay, so you get 2 abilities, add 1 to the attack's wound roll, and an unmodified wound roll of 6 improves the AP by 2. It's all right. It's all right.
I mean, improving the armor penetration characteristic by 2 is pretty meaningful, unless, of course, obviously, it's got an invuln.
I know, but it's on that thing that you hate though, which is on a wound roll, which you always say you forget about.
Well, I do. I mean, I'm less likely to forget about them when they're stratagems because I've specifically done it. Like, I would have to have a very special form of, short-term memory to have not realised that I just did that thing. But even then, it does happen, right? So I think, personally, I'm more at odds with those kind of abilities when they relate to like warlord traits. But as a stratagem, I'm a little less likely to forget them. But fair enough.
That makes sense.
Carry forth the faithful, another 1/2 CB stratagem. So Lord only knows what this could potentially be. Something as monumental as +1 to your movement characteristic, or you get to re-roll successful saves. Let's find out. Use the stratagem in the start of the first battle round before the first turn begins. Select one order of the Bloody Rose transport model from your army that has any models embarked within it. This cannot be a model that has any Dominion squad models embarked within it. There we are. That model can make a normal move as if it were your movement phase, but must end that move more than 9 away from any enemy models. If both players have blah 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 blah. If both players have abilities with this thing, you roll off. Oh no, hang on. You don't actually roll off this time. So if both players have units that have moved before the first turn begins, the player who's taking the first turn moves their units first. That's new because often they stipulate that you're going to roll off. So much so that I just assumed that was what the situation was going to be. Anyway. If a Retributor squad or Sister Repentia unit is embarked inside the transport, the stratagem costs 2 CP. Otherwise, it's 1 CP. I love how much they hate Repentia, it seems. It's like, we've created a monster, and we have to go to great lengths to make them less desirable.
Well, it's because they know they're really good, all right? So that's why they're giving you a bit of CP tax for them. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Actually, that's not too terrible. A pre-game move that could actually be as little as 1 CP. Admittedly, obviously, you're going to have to take a Rhino, but a lot of Sisters players were rocking the Rhinos anyway, so no bad thing.
Next one is Fueled by Rage. It's 1 CP or 2 CP. Use a stratagem in your opponent's shooting phase when an Order of a Bloody Rose core unit from your army is selected as the target of a ranged attack. Until the end of the phase, each time the model in that unit is destroyed by an attack made by an enemy model on a 4+. Do not remove the destroyed model from play. It can, after the attacking model's unit has finished making its attacks, shoot with one of its ranged weapons as if it were your shooting phase. After resolving these attacks, the destroyed model is removed. If the selected Order of Bloody Rose unit is a Retributor squad, it costs 2 CP. Otherwise, it costs 1.
Yet again with the Retributor specific stipulations, but it makes sense, right?
Because they're the ones with the heavy bolters, right? They're the Devastator-esque squad, I'd assume.
Now you're asking. Let's double check that I'm correct about this. To the Sisters of Battle page, Armies of the Imperium, Adeptus Sororitas.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yeah. Retributor is the heavy weapon squad, yeah. It checks out. Right, okay, flipping heck. Is that what is it? Is that Cataclysm of Wrathful Defiance?
Catechism of Wrathful Defiance. A catechism, isn't it like an event?
All right, fair enough. An event of Wrathful Defiance. It's also 1 or 2 CP. Use the stratagem in your command phase. Select one Order of the Bloody Rose infantry unit from your army until your next command phase. That unit gains the following abilities. Wrathful Defiance. It's an aura. While an enemy unit is within 6 of this unit, each time a model in that enemy unit makes an attack that targets this unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. If you select a unit which has 11 or more models, the stratagem costs 2 CP. Otherwise, it costs 1. There you go. You got the last one, Phil. Tell us what it is, mate.
What's interesting with that one is I guess it also works in the shooting phase, but only
on the assertion that someone's within 6 of it.
Yeah, but otherwise it's like you're in combat, so just make it within engagement range. But I guess they've kind of gone, but aura abilities need to have a range. Aura abilities don't just work within engagement range. Yeah,
I think that makes sense, though. I think that's an adequate way of approaching it. To be fair.
Yes, yeah. It's because it also has to be done in your command phase. So it's like I'm going to put this on my Repentia, and then I'm going to use the Scourge of the Penitent. And if I fail my charge because of my 1 CP, my 6-inch range, because I rolled really badly, I'm gonna be protected slightly. Feels a bit of a weird one. Sorry. So Savage Twist is 1 CP. It's a war gear stratagem. Use a stratagem in your fight phase when the Order of Bloody Rose infantry unit from your army is selected to fight until the end of the phase. Each time a model in that unit that makes an attack with a melee weapon, excluding a close combat weapon, which is basically the non-profile. So if you're fighting with fists, basically. So basically, if you're not doing that, an unmodified wound roll of 6 increases the damage characteristic of the attack by 1. That's pretty good.
A reasonable selection, I'd say. I mean, nothing about that is immediately blowing me away, but then so often I say these things and then discover after the fact that actually a bunch of far more efficient 40k gamers have transformed these things into some of the most insane rules going. But initially, I look at it and I think to myself, all right, okay, yeah, cool. I mean, it's Order of the Bloody Rose. It seems all right. Fighty, bunch of things that, give it a little extra something, but predominantly some of those stratagems are pretty meaningless, but I suppose some of it works. And, there's some interesting aspects of the warlord traits and things, and the relics seem like they've got some interesting options, but, there's no immediately obviously awesome stuff, at least to me, like there was with the Armated Lady. I think that was immediately like, yeah, you get it, this is good, whereas this is a bit more...
It feels like there's a lot of things that it can do, but overall none of it is really synergizing together. It's like, you can make one unit slightly better in combat via this method, or you can make another unit slightly better in combat via a different method. But it's not like, cool, I'm going to take this relic, this warlord trait, and these 2 stratagems and create like a bonkers combo, which is what you sometimes get with these. I think this is where it falls down. Not falls down. This is where it falls into the category of it's a solid, all right Codex supplement. Like, it's not crazy good. Doesn't need to be. They're normally just quite average, which for the good of the game or for the health of the game is a good thing. I think, if you're an Order of the Bloody Rose player, it's just more stuff for you. So great. You should be happy with them. And it gives you a couple more tools to use in your toolbox, basically.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it, with these Codex supplements? I think, often they've added a lot of really, really strong stuff, but even if that isn't the case, at least it's giving you more options, which maybe you're not going to take advantage of all that often, but it's nice to have them. And, I think that is one of the innate benefits of the 9th edition Codex, is despite some of the almost unnecessary layers of complexity that are thrown into the mix quite often, the fact is that complexity offers you the opportunity to be quite creative. So I think there is something to be said for the fact that these rules will give you that additional flexibility. So it's all right. It's all right. I think, for those out there who are diehard Bloody Rose players, I'm sure it's lovely. But I can't imagine this is something that too many people are going to be frothing at the mouth, foaming at the teeth to add to their collection.
Well, it's interesting because, I don't know if this is in part because I'm a Guard player. So when we went through the Cadia supplement, that seemed really strong.
Agreed.
And I don't know if that was because it's an 8th Ed Codex, so they wanted to up the power level as a stopgap. And obviously, Order of Bloody Rose is a 9th Ed Codex, so the power level is like, it's all right. That you don't need the broken combos because you've already got a really decent army as it stands. So it'll be interesting to see how things iron out once everyone's got all their codexes and all of these supplements are out, where they all fit in together. But overall, it feels like it's an okay thing, not great. not bad, just okay.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with that, mate. All right, cool. Well, there we go. That's that, I reckon. I guess we're going to move on to whatever it is that comes next. So, transitional noise. And that's it, everyone. The end of the show. Although you know better than that, or at least I hope you do. Maybe you don't. Who can say for certain? But we're going to try. We're going to try and talk about. God, I'm really struggling today, Phil. With stuff.
Words.
We're going to talk about stuff. Words, things. Yeah. So 40k things. Have you noticed, Phil? There you go. I'll get it going. Have you noticed that there's a whole heap of new wibbly rules doing the rounds for these Xenos factions that they're releasing? Games Workshop seem to be experimenting with new mechanics and causing all sorts of, loopy fun with regards to what they're doing.
Yes, so you must be referencing the recently previewed on Warhammer Community article about prisms, fire prisms, and their lovely stratagem that allows them to ignore invuln saves.
Well, not just fire prisms, though, but obviously, the ignoring of invuns has become quite a common trope of like the upcoming Xenos lists, because obviously, admittedly, GSC didn't get it in any real meaningful quantity, but clearly the Tau have got it, and now we know.
Got it. Bellacor's got it on his sword.
Yeah, it's true. Bellacor's got it. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's a couple of close combat units that have got it, normally characters, and a couple of like big guns, which feels, I guess, thematic, but it sort of dispels the point of an invuln save. Like, it's interesting. I assume they don't ignore void shields because void shields isn't an invuln save, or is it now? Because they might have changed it in 9th edition.
So a void shield is still given an invuln save, but it's essentially like an extra.
It's a degrading one, right? But it on top of an invuln save? So if it ignores invuns, does it ignore void shields?
Well, no. So void shields are quite a specific thing. So essentially, it's almost like having an additional like profile over the top of you. Although now that you've said these words, I'm compelled to go and look at something that has void shields and try and ascertain whether or not that whole situation is entirely accurate. What has void shields these days?
There's the Astraeus, but I'm going to look at the more recent one, which is Warzone Octarius, the Void Shield Generator, which is a
feature. Has that got a Void Shield, has it?
Actually, it doesn't. It's a Void Shield Generator, but it confers an invuln save.
The Mastodon, that had a Void Shield, didn't it?
Yep, as does. Oh, I've got the Warlord's Titan. That's
definitely
Void Shields. It has a 5-up invulnerable save against range attacks, and 3 shield points.
Yeah, so you roll the invuns on the shield points, and then the shield points erode,
destroying. So each time a saving throw is failed for this model, which may be against the invuln, it may be your regular armor save, depending on the AP of the attack. If it has any void shields, it does not suffer any damage. Instead, it loses 1 void shield point, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so it does act differently. But if you have an invuln save, which is technically what the void shield is giving you, it would be ignored by the Tau Railgun, for example.
Oh yeah, but the models only receive the 5-up invuln when their void shields are in play. Once those void shields are removed, that 5-up invuln goes away as well. Just to say, in the case
that
of
make sense.
Yeah. But so void shields, sure, like they're basically like additional armor points that once you've kind of if you shoot it and it fails to save, which it inevitably will do, given the fact that this thing ignores invuns and is -5 and da-da-da-da-da. Or even, I think the railgun's -6, if I remember correctly. But either way, the point is that, that'll, whatever the damage was going to be would then reduce to 1. Although what's actually really funny about the railgun, I suppose, against void shields, is you'd shoot it, right, with the thing, and then you do the 1 wound with the gun that should have been like, say, 10 damage, but just becomes 1 because of void shields. But then it plinks 3 mortal wounds on you, which I think basically
Yeah.
kills every other void shield on you.
Well, I actually think the mortal wounds go straight onto the model and not onto the void shield, although that is an interesting point because I don't think they talk about the mortal wounds.
I don't think they
Oh,
give
wait,
any...
hold on. Each
Oh.
mortal wound inflicted on a model with void shields causes the model to lose 1 wound as normal.
Ah,
So
nice. Look at that. They thought about everything.
Yeah, so that is good. Otherwise, that would, as you say, rinse the void shields.
Yeah, that'd be so mad, wouldn't it? Just literally one railgun goes, bloop, all your void shields are gone now. Yay. It's like, oh, man. Pretty rough. But it's interesting to me, though, as I say, like how much Games Workshop are kind of trying to, update this game system and sprinkle in mechanics that, ultimately are creating a lot of intriguing responses within the community. Because I think one of the things that I guess people like about an invuln save is the fact that it offers you that degree of certainty, which so often in the game now, there's so few things that are that give you that degree of reassurance that you're going to have it in most circumstances. Whereas now, obviously, even that is sort of gone away, and there was definitely like 1 or 2 things in 8th edition that ignored invuns. It's not like ignoring invuns.
I think it was the shield breaker missiles.
Yes,
pretty much the only thing in the game, and it was definitely.
I think there was another weapon, like a sword on something. I think maybe it was. Oh, that was it. It was the and it's still the case now. It was the assassin with the
oh yes,
phase sword.
Calidus assassin.
Calidus assassin had it as well. Yeah. And
so
maybe
those were like the 2 things that I can.
Maybe the Deathwing, not Deathwing, sorry, Deathwatch Xenoblade had it.
Oh yeah, maybe.
I think if you rolled a 6
a few
or
obscure things that could do it,
but they weren't railguns or fire prism cannons.
No.
They weren't.
I'm pretty sure back in the day, I'd even said on this podcast, early doors, that more things should ignore invuns because at that point, invuns were pretty like annoying, and you would have like free up invuns. I mean, even to this day, you can still get free up invuns in some cases, but it feels like they've toned down the invuns a little bit in this edition. But in terms of what the save is, so on average, the lowest is pretty much 4. But it feels like they're doling out invuns to more things, like your basic Bogo standard Elder Guardians can get a 5-up invuln because of a shield generator that's like a little upgrade now. They previewed a Warhammer community
for the Storm Guardians,
yeah. So it feels like there's and Black Tempers, you can have army-wide invuln saves. Like there is plenty of ways of getting like mass invuln saves for whole armies, which sort of feels like it breaks the concept. Like Harlequins, I don't mind so much because they're very fragile, but for other stuff, it feels a bit much. And then, I mean, is it going to create more interesting interactive layers of the game? Lots of invuns, lots of things that ignore invuns. It feels a bit sucky to have a character, for example, shot by a prison tank or a railgun that is going to suddenly kill off and one-shot a character. If it's a vehicle, maybe it's more fair game. I do sort of feel a bit sorry for knights because they kind of rely on their invuln save, unless of course they're all of a sudden going to get like 2-up saves in the new Codex, like the Lehman Rust, to sort of help counteract that. But most of the things like the railgun and the prisms all have like -5, -6 AP. So it's like doesn't matter how good your AP is, your save is. It's just going to go through it.
It's the fact as well, though, that they're on things that have a number of gimmicks that make them really irritatingly difficult to get a hold of. Like the fact that the fire prism is essentially going to move one model out, link fire to all the other prisms on the table, shoot via that one, and then that one is going to move back into cover out of line of sight. It's just those synergies that's pretty mad. But I find it interesting, as I say, I find it interesting that Games Workshop are starting to kind of find their footing with the game system that they've kind of created. But I think one of the things that's sort of interesting about this is how much they're kind of tweaking things and how much of a difference these decisions have on the overall kind of viability of the game. And I think one of the things that's really interesting in the moment is just how they're ramping up the lethality of everything. Like everything is becoming super killy, which is obviously why the competitive scene has taken great strides to kind of push this terrain narrative, because at the end of the day, within like the competitive space, if we were playing on the old 6th, 7th, or even early 8th edition board layouts, the sorts of firepower that do the rounds in this game, you would just literally be rolling to see who wins. Literally, it would just be you sweeping up your opponent in a turn. And we obviously saw that exemplified in other kind of like competitive gaming showcases, like at the LGT, where the AdMech just basically deleted that Dreadnought list in a turn with no hassle. And the fact that we knew that if the Dreadnought list had gone first, it would have done the same in return. It's just an interesting set of interesting kind of design philosophies that they're going for. And what really made me laugh is they put out an article this week about the Avatar, and they've done this kind of like matchup piece where they're like, let's have the Avatar face off against things within the game, and they're obviously doing all of these honorable combats where he's fighting against sort of other big epic characters, or obviously units where his abilities can come into their own. But again, to kind of speak to the madness of the game, it's like, it's cool, like the Avatar can, and I suppose should, be able to take a hit from, I don't know, a Bane Blade, or a what's the volcano cannon Bane Blade called again?
Shadow Sword.
Yeah, so like the Avatar probably does tank a Shadow Sword, right? Because the way the Shadow Sword's weapon is at the moment, the Avatar is well positioned to be able to sort of soak up that damage, because he's got that 4-up invuln, because he's halving that damage. But the reality of the situation with the Avatar is you come up against one unit of 10 Deathwing, or not Deathwing, sorry, Deathwatch, as part of the army of Renown that auto wounds when they hit, and it's dead in a turn, right? Like, and I mean, you throw a Grey Knight Psychic phase at this guy, he's dead. You throw a unit of Skitarii Vanguard with the iridium bullets that auto wound on 5s, he's dead. Like, it's not. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's interesting to me the way they're kind of positioning it, but at the same time, maybe actually within the way the game is developing, maybe this is a good thing though, because now we are actually getting to a point where they are releasing models that have certain matchups, and that's potentially why it's valuable to give us things like ignoring invuln and ignoring or auto wounding. Maybe these mechanics are actually within the system delivering something similar to when you turned up with a armor 14 vehicle in 7th edition that no one brought any las cannons to deal with or whatever,
Yeah, it's an interesting one in terms of like a design philosophy, in terms of, is it, because I think everyone's just used to invuln saves, super durable, really good, like must have. Basically anything without it, junk, don't take it in your list, is the general internet perceived wisdom. Like Redemptors only get a pass because of the -1 damage, and like they're well costed and stuff. Otherwise, before that, everyone was like, must be a Contemptor because I must have an invuln save. But now when there's more stuff that ignore invulns, does it then give you the flexibility to open up your list to be like, cool, I can take my bog standard tanks without invuln saves anymore, because it doesn't matter, because actually it's going to die just as quick as my more expensive model with an invuln save against a railgun. So, take the cheaper option. Is another interesting point though, like how do you point cost something with an invuln save, knowing that invuln save might not be there? So you've got a knight, it's super expensive, it's durable, and a lot of that durability is the invuln save that you can give it, and that there's a strat to rotate the iron shield. But if you now know that in a couple of armies there's units that can just not effectively one-shot kill it, but ignore at least the invuln save, how can you point cost that unit knowing that one of its core abilities may or may not be working depending on the matchup it's against?
I mean, in some respects, is this now the reintroduction of the D concept? Because you remember, obviously, in the older editions, they introduced these strength D weapons, and they started then sprinkling them around. Are we now going to move into a situation where more and more armies have ignore and invuln thing? But also, to your point about points costing and working out that balance, maybe moving forwards, that's something they're thinking about in terms of how they points things, because they are now getting to a place where they're willing to give weapons much greater lethality, in the sense that we're getting these weapons that will do high levels of damage to things, which we weren't really getting before. Like before, the most damage weapon I could think of was the Paragon Gauntlet on a Knight Gallant, and that was the most damage of anything in the game, I think.
Well, the Volcano Cannon on the Shadow Sword was up there as well, because that could one-shot most vehicles.
What was the damage of the Volcano Cannon?
Oh, I
I
think
thought it was
like
3d3, wasn't it?
I think so, but it's actually the number of shots that you get, which
yes, because you get the d6 shots, don't you, or something?
No, I think it's 3d3.
Okay, so 3d3 and then 3d3 damage, or because I know on the Imperial Knight variant of it, the Knight Castellan variant is just 1d6 shots, 3d3 damage.
Yeah, so the Shadow Sword, Volcano Cannon, heavy 3d3, strength 16, -5, 2d6 damage.
Oh, Jesus.
So very swingy, but on average 6 shots. You can reroll failed wound rolls when targeting Titanic units. I think there's a way of getting +1 to your hit as well. Yeah, so it's got +1 to hit against Titanic units.
But the point is, though, Phil, do you think that it's reasonable to assert that that's going to become ignore invuln? Like, it has to, right?
It bloody better be. I will flip every table I see, even in a non-40k setting. Just, going around a coffee shop. Flip tables! Where's my invuln save? I want to ignore it!
And you'd be justified in the doing, I reckon. I think people would understand.
The amount of times that I've used the Shadow Sword, and I bloody love the Shadow Sword, but yeah, when you come up against like a Drakari army with all their boats and their invuln saves, and it's like, cool, all these shots, and it's like, I just made all my rolls, it's cool, I'm fine.
And that was the thing as well, was it? Because they're -1 to be hit as well. You're like,
oh god, they were, cool. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, Drakari is like the bane of my life when it comes to a guard matchup army.
It's interesting as well, though, and I saw Auspex Tactics put this post up on his socials the other day, which was the Leman Russ has been greatly impacted by basically changing one stat by 1, which was increasing the save from a 3 up to a 2 up, and the impact that's had on the tank is actually pretty meaningful. And then the question was, what other things would you want to see have their stat line improved by 1? And I do think there is an argument that the Baneblade / Shadow Sword should go from Ballistical 4 up to 3 up, right? Like that's one of those things where it's crazy that thing is on a 4 up, I guess.
I mean, I sort of get the logic why, like, an average human should hit on a 4+.
Yeah.
But when you get to big, really expensive units that should have lots of equipment in them, you could see the justification for increasing its ballistic skill.
You think they put like a targeting system in that thing, right? Like, we built this massive tank. Cool. How do I shoot it? Oh yeah, you just eyeball it. What?
Yes, I always found it a bit annoying that your the Grenadiers for Krieg have a 3-up ballistic skill, so they've got a better ballistic skill, but then when you had the Storm Chimera, which was a transport specifically for them, it would still have a 4-up ballistic skill, even when they're, I guess even now, manning the guns to shoot out, for example. But yeah, it's like, why haven't I got elite crew manning my regular tank with
they're just the
Grenadiers
driver, aren't they?
I guess, but as you say, if you've got very expensive, very big, super rare relic such as a Baneblade, why wouldn't you have top marksmen manning the guns in it? But I think it's also the shift of how the game's gone in terms of it used to be very sort of bog standard stat lines to now every army has something that hits on 2+ because it's just good, whether it's, you know, justified in the lore to an extent. It feels like, you know, if Custodes are 2+ and they're like superhuman, better than Space Marines, and they hit on 2s, you know, how can you justify like some other like weird aberrant creature from a Xenos race or a, you know, a mutant having a similar ballistic skill? It's like chaos wibbly warpy stuff, I guess, is the explanation. But yes, it's a bit odd sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with that statement, mate. And I think that's one of the things that's sort of weird about the system. And I've always said it, and at the risk of repeating myself, I'll say it again, which is that it's one of the failings of this edition and 8th edition before it is the inability to express nuance with the design of the game, right? Like, as I've always said, Roberto Gilliman and Lionel Johnson are both Primarchs. And as a result, they're pretty decent when it comes to most aspects of battle. However, Lionel Johnson is just a little bit, but in the, you know, in the Primarch scaling quite significantly better than Gilliman when it comes to fighting with a sword. You know, in terms of melee combat, Lionel Johnson is better. You know, Gilliman's got other benefits, but when it comes to, you know, just general, you know, swordsmanship, Lionel Johnson is superior. But in 40k ideology, in terms of like 9th edition systems, they're both going to hit on 2s. They'll probably give Lionel Johnson a special rule to basically assert that he has that prowess. He'll have probably -1 to be hit and maybe have his own native rerolls or stuff. But again, there was a beautiful simplicity to the fact that you could go, Gilliman is weapon skill 6. Lionel Johnson is weapon skill 7. And then you go, there we go. It all makes sense. You know, it's like a very nice, simple thing. And that's one of the things that I feel is a bit of a shame that it's sort of that nuance isn't there sometimes. But hey, look, it is.
Well, that's just because they've compacted in terms of weapon skill and to an extent ballistic skill, they've compacted a 1 to 10 system down to a 1 to 6 dice roll. And in olden days with ballistic skill, and when you have ballistic skill modifiers, if something was too difficult to do, it could be, okay, you hit on a 6. If you roll a 6 to hit, you can then maybe hit it actually if you rolled a 4 or a 5. Like, so you've got to do 2 rolls that are quite high to make this very improbable shot possible. And likewise, if you rolled a 1 and your ballistic skill was like 10, you could then get a reroll effectively, but built in to a certain number. So it's like, yeah, I rolled a 1, but now I need a 4 or 2 or something. Yeah. Whereas now they've gone 1 to 6. This is what you need on dice roll. 1's always a fail. 6 is always a hit. But now we bake in rerolls, or we give you +1.
Bacon rerolls.
Bacon rerolls. Baked in rerolls. Or
you did say baked in rerolls. I just, you know, I couldn't help myself. But
a bacon reroll. That's the kind of roll I want on a
absolutely a bacon roll. Yeah, absolutely. That's the way to kick off the day. On the topic of you know, bacon rolls, let's talk about the Chaos Kill Team. They've got a very you know, kind of I don't know, bacony looking faces. I don't know. They're very
Trevium.
They're very interesting. I mean, so the Chaos Space Marines, or Chaos Legionary, as they're called now, aren't they? Kill team is basically your standard upgrade sprue for the existing Heretica Astartes box, and it's been greeted with a certain amount of enthusiasm by the internet. Wouldn't you say so, Phil?
I presume you're being somewhat sarcastic, but I disagree with those naysayers. I think it's great.
They've just got some very funny looking faces. Let's be
basically
real.
People have memed the guy with the horn and the smiley face,
who is clearly a Nurgle guy.
That's my take on it. Is the horn is a growth of Nurgle, and Nurgle's Nurgle people are characterized as always being kind of jovial, which is why he's got a bit of a menacing grin type look. He's giving me very Bruce Campbell vibes. That's what I got out of it.
My favourite one was the one where they they put his face on Frasier, I thought that was the best one.
Oh no! I've seen a few. One of them is, where there's the meme of the guy and the girlfriend, and the guy's looking at this other girl walking past.
Yes,
but they
yeah,
put
yeah.
his face on all of them.
Nice.
And then the other one was the one I sent to the our chat group earlier, which was, the look you have when when the War Master tells you to like buddy up, and it's him on one side and what's his name? The Death Guard guy in Terminator armor. That character
the
with
easy
the
build
weird
one they did. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
with the smiley face, because they're both like looking at each other, go, yeah.
I'll tell you what, actually, though, looking through the lineup, there is some gorgeousness to this one, though, right? Like, I think the sorcerer, word bearer,
Oh yeah,
upgrade,
he's very cool.
Really cool. Like, I think the way they've got that kind of menacing, grin with all of the kind of, etched in kind of tattoos or whatever it is that those word bearers do to themselves. Because it's not tattoos, is it? They basically cut.
Is it scarification?
Yeah, that's the word. So that's really awesome, to see that. And then just the sheer volume of like amazing additional weapon upgrades that they've given you. The fact that you're going to now be able to actually get the chain cannon in the standard Chaos Space Marine box is really cool.
Well, don't you get one normally? So this is your second one, right?
No. So the normal Chaos Space Marine kit didn't give you the rotary chain cannon thing. It just gave you a heavy bolter, if I'm correct.
Okay.
So I think you might have had a missile launcher as well, but you definitely had the heavy bolter. I'm just looking at the listings for them now, just to reassert. So yeah, so you got the heavy bolter. You got plasma pistol, got a melter gun. But yeah, you didn't. So yeah, so that's a really awesome addition. As is the flamer. Didn't get the flamer before. So they've given them the flamer, and they've also given them that large double-handed cornate axe.
With really bad 3D printed lines on it. Have you noticed?
I didn't notice. Where are you seeing these 3D printed lines?
So if you at the bottom of the page where it's the like montage, the chain axe, if you open it up and look at it, you can see there's little 3D printed lines. Because to clarify for people listening at home, the heavy metal team gets 3D printed sculpts in resin, I guess, and they paint those up because they've got to paint it up months in advance of the plastic kits actually being ready. So the plastic kits won't have the 3D printed lines in, but it's interesting that they've got them here on this one.
Interesting, yeah. They've also clearly added a bunch of bits to make a possessed as well, which is quite cool. So they're giving you a bunch of bits for that, and then they've got this Night Lords-esque assassin guy with the almost kind of Reaver inspired skull mask and double blades, which looks cooler than it often always is in game. That's always the problem. It's like the two knife skull face guy looks cool, but they can't ever seem to get it right when it comes to the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the whole, the kill team rules have always been pretty cool. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they get in terms of the actual kill team rules themselves. I'm sure they'll do it justice. Whether it gets any special rules in 40k, though, who knows?
Well, I think, ultimately, if they're just going to ensure that we're able to utilize the war gear options, then that's something. The inclusion of a squad sorcerer is really interesting, but again, not something that hasn't been established within, within Chaos Space Marine armies. We have the Thousand Suns, and they operate perfectly fine with a sorcerer leading squads.
So I guess it'll just be an upgrade that you can take for the squad.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be one of those infamous, upgrade pages that G-Dubs loves doing at the moment, where they're just literally like, pay an extra 20 points and he becomes a psyker with, who knows smite and one of a from this discipline.
Maybe
you know?
it feels like it'd be more baked into the data sheet because it's part of the model range. So it's I can't remember if the Thousand Suns. I think they just have it by default. So to me, it will be this is upgrade one model in the unit, a bit like a weapon.
I would be surprised if they did it default like that. I think it's more likely to be similar to how they did the Black Templars, because obviously the Black Templars can have unit upgrades.
Oh, that's true.
And this is the same sort of vibe with this, and all those upgrades were kind of locked into that upgrading section. So you could have the orb, holy orb of whatever it was, the name that was lifted from Monty Python, right?
Oh yeah, the Holy Grail. Yeah,
yes,
the orb. Yes,
Orb of Antioch, was that what it was called?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going.
Thou shalt chuck of
pondering my orb.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Count to 3. 5 is right out. If I remember correctly, I can't remember. I can't remember enough of that movie. But no, look. Actually, upon review, bar that one grimacing face, and to be fair, I didn't get on very well with the easy build Death Guard mini for the same reasons. I thought the Nurgle grinny face was a bit much, but the fact of the matter is you're not going to need to use that head, right? If you're not into it, you're just going to put
if you're not going to use it, send it to me because I want it.
You want to collect loads of them. That's what you want.
I'm going to basically meme a squad. So I have a squad where they've all got the same face.
That would be the perfect squad. Could you imagine if you actually did have a whole... Someone out there is clearly eyeing that up. You did a whole squad of that head. That would be the best squad in existence.
You will win the internet for the day.
Absolutely. And probably get lots of praise at every event you go to for the next 2 months.
I mean, if you don't win like those best squad awards, like in painting competitions, I don't know what's going on with the world.
Well, Phil, clearly this is something you need to do, mate. Make it part of your... Or maybe we could, campaign towards Joe. Joe's a Chaos Space Marine player. Maybe he could do it.
I know. I don't think he liked it, though. But maybe we should make him do it anyway.
Well, exactly. Although he's just done a bunch of Raven Guard with all beaky heads, and I personally can't stand beaky heads, so, he owes me.
Well, fair enough.
I don't know why that is the case. I'm just making a statement. But, look, I think, honestly, genuinely, actually looking at it again, bar that one silly face, it looks great. It's a cool selection. It's more Chaos Space Marine stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to see because we were like, oh, what are they going to do? And I was like, oh, it should be like Traitor Guardsmen or something, a bit more small scale as opposed to actually Marines. And it's like, but I think it's a good move that they've done that. Hopefully we will still see other Chaos kill teams like Traitor Guard and stuff down the line for kill team. That would be great. It does make you go, this is probably what they do for Space Marines. They'll probably give us like an upgrade sprue for Primaris intercessors or assault intercessors maybe with extra weapon options. So I could see that happening. Maybe they'd do a similar thing because I think basically the assault intercessors had things like the Thunderhammers, right? But the regular kit doesn't have it. So they might give you a ton of weapon options for your sergeants, for your regular intercessors, plus a bunch more, like, I don't know. It was a thing, they don't do special weapons in the intercessor squads. That's kind of the point of them.
That's why they've got to do it for the Death Watch. I'm telling you, you need the shotguns, the weird, wibbly, heavy weapon variants, all for Primaris.
Oh, yeah,
that would be amazing. Really cool. Yeah. That's what I was hoping to see. I was really hopeful that... I mean, everyone on the internet was saying it was Chaos Space Marines already, but I was like, but maybe it'll be Death Watch. It's like, nah, it's not Death Watch. But I'm certainly not disappointed with it. I think it looks cool. It's not something I'm going to be. Collecting or painting. But I will be buying this box set because.
Well, what do you? Oh no, go on. Tell us why you're going to be buying it.
Because Corsairs.
Okay, fair enough. What do you think of a terrain setup that comes in the box?
Well, I know what you think, so I'm going to say it seems fine.
Well, I agree when you factor in the price because it
does seem fine. But
I looked at it and I was like, it's the Warzone Caradon stuff, but slightly worse potentially. It's very similar, which is funny because the Warzone Caradon stuff's just being discontinued / last chance to buy, so you can still buy it, and it is expensive for what you get. You get 2 of the larger platforms though, but you don't get the crane which you get in this new one for Nachmund. But it's literally the same terrain, similar, pretty much the same amount of terrain. It is the same terrain in terms of it's the same actual models in terms of the color scheme and stuff, so they've reused it for this photo shoot, I guess. But bearing in mind that the Nachmund Kill Team box set is probably going to be around the same price, or maybe 10 or 20 quid more than the Caradon Warzone terrain box. It's way more value for money because you're getting your 2 teams plus all the rules and stuff as well.
I mean, thinking about it, actually, I mean, how long will it be till they release the Corsairs separately? Like 3 months? I may as well just wait.
No, you're going to be waiting. So they've only just released the Krieg Kill Team separately. So you're going to be waiting about 8 months, I reckon.
When did Kill Team come out then? Was it like 6 months ago or something?
It was pretty much the middle of last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
So
anyway,
over 6 months, I would say.
Well, maybe then I will buy it and then just eBay off the rest of it. Give Joe the Chaos Space. Well, not give it to him. Sell him. Well, he hasn't got any money.
You can give me the heads, and
I will give you. Stop coming on to me, Phil. I at least want to be taken out for a drink first, dear me. But yeah, so that's the plan. I'll give Phil the head, and then I'll do with the rest as I please. I don't know. I will buy it, I suppose, for the Corsairs, and then try and find a home for everything else. I'm going through the purge at the moment, though, Phil. I'm getting rid of like loads of stuff. Which reminds me, if that individual is listening to this part of the podcast, I'm aware I owe someone a bunch of elder stuff in the post, so I should probably send them to them. I've bagged it all up. I just have never gotten around to going into a post office because it's a real pain in the ass to go places. So I haven't done it because I'm terrible. But there you go. That person out there who approached me and had a nice conversation with me about getting a bunch of elder stuff, I'm sorry. You deserve better. I'm the worst. But I will try. I'm trying. But yeah, Chaos Space Marine. Fun. So next episode, Phil, we're going to be talking about... Oh, my God.
What are we going to talk about,
Phil?
Well, I don't know.
No, fair enough. We're going to talk about Codex, Craftworlds, and all of the other elder stuff within it. It's going to be, Phil, a really, 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 really,
boring
really
episode.
Painful podcast to record.
Is it because it's 3 armies in one?
It's so much stuff.
Is it going to be the fattest Codex yet?
Honestly, so it's essentially Codex, Craftworlds, Harlequins, Ynnari with a bit of Corsairs.
Oh yeah, because Corsairs is going to be in it as well. Yeah.
So, but Corsairs, I don't know what. Again, we'll find out. But so you got the Ynnari, Harlequins, Craftworlds, and Corsairs.
Here's the thing: Ynnari have access to Drukhari, so are they just going to say, "See that book"?
I think
yes, because that's what they did with Genestealer Cult and Astra Militarum.
I think what's really interesting to me is it's quite clear that Games Workshop are going to be doing 10th edition next year, and it's quite clear that I know. I mean, who would have thought? But it's also quite clear that throughout the course of 2020 and then 2021, that the first year and a half of 9th edition, they weren't able to release the sort of cadence that they needed to in order to deliver what was probably the vision for this edition, which probably involved a Harlequin book, maybe not Ynnari book, but maybe Harlequins and Ynnari would have been one book and Craftworlds would have been its own one. So there would have been like the Craftworlds are their own army, Drukhari are their own army, and here's the supplement book, which is Ynnari and Harlequins and Corsairs. And this, it just seems really odd that they've just kind of gone, there you go.
I would disagree. I actually think it makes more sense to bundle Ynnari with Craftworlds because it's effectively a bolt-on. It's running
then why
the
didn't they
army
do it with
in a
Drakari?
slightly...
Why is Drakari its own thing yet?
Because
everything else-
Drakari is a really substantial army, right?
What,
Yunari...
Craftworld's isn't?
No, Craftworlds is, but what I mean is Yunari is much more aligned. Yunari is a bolt onto Craftworlds
And
predominantly, and Drakari to an extent.
And
but
Harlequins.
most people will play them 90% Craftworlds, I reckon.
I would entirely disagree with that statement.
Thematically, that's how it's meant to be done.
I don't think it is.
Harlequins, I think they're like, where does it should be its own thing, but it's not big enough to be its own thing.
But that's why Harlequins and Yunari and Corsairs would have made more sense as a sort of supplementary sort of book where they went, Craftworlds is the main thing, Harlequins is the main thing, not Harlequins, sorry, Drakari is the main thing, and then other types of Elder becomes its own sort of, own thing. Because Craftworlds really does and should exist on its own, much like Drakari does. And then Quins and Yunari should sort of be a book of other things. But look, whatever the case, it's all getting rammed into this one book, which maybe was the plan all along, but it feels a little bit like it probably wasn't to me. But then maybe I'm wrong, Phil. I'm almost certainly am. And even if it wasn't the plan, it's what's happening now. So, hey, we're going to get used to it.
We'll never know. We'll
never know. We'll never know. But anyway, I just find it interesting, I think, because, throughout the span of this year, we know that obviously we now got Craftworlds. We know Nid's around the corner. That's basically been confirmed. We've still got Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Demons. Heard
Chaos
nothing about
Knights.
them.
Yeah.
Chaos Knights. Well, we know Chaos Knights are very likely to be a thing because obviously we've seen
the preview
of the things. So it really is like, could Chaos Demons and Guard be the last things of this edition?
Or, well, there's also regular knights as well. But
regular knights, yeah, crikey.
It is, and assassins we've still got to have, but that will come in a Warzone book, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be amazing if all of a sudden they decided to actually do something with the Inquisition again.
But, here's the thing. They won't, because they've already done the Inquisition in a Warzone book, which to me makes no sense because they've not really... Like, in the story, there wasn't really much going on with Inquisition when they included them. All they did was update the rules and basically didn't change anything. And it's like, the one thing you could have done that needs an update way more is Assassins, and then do Inquisition later on. But I would like a combined, like, Assassins, Inquisition, throw in Rogue Traders, add a splash of, like, Guard, the Minotaurs Priest units into them, so they can take things like Crusaders and Arco-Flagellants and stuff and make it more of a single book for them to use. That would be cool. I just can't see it happening. It's weird. On a slightly side note, Erasmus, the new Inquisition model for the store anniversary exclusive model, appears and is a character in the Vigilus Alone book, but his rules aren't in there. Weirdly, he's just a character in the background.
He's just someone that they're, I don't know. I think at some point it'd be interesting if they did do a new range of minis to actually do like a broader kind of inquisitional force, or again maybe like the Craftworlds film. Maybe that's going to get wrapped up in Codex Astra Militarum. Maybe it's going to become Forces of the Imperium, and it's just going to be Astra Militarum, Inquisition.
Maybe.
Assassins.
Maybe.
I mean, they've pretty much set the tone with Craftworlds now that they're willing to, chuck everything into one book kind of haphazardly. So why not do it with the Guard?
Yeah, I mean, is it good for Elder players? Like, would Elder players really rather have bought 3 separate books? Like, especially if you play Yunari, you're still gonna have to buy Drakari as well, or if you're a Harlequins only player, are you now annoyed that you've got to buy a codex full of all this other stuff?
Well, I think in many respects, and again, maybe this is this isn't an accurate statement, but I think in a lot of respects, what Games Workshop are doing to the Harlequins like right now is sort of like what Games Workshop did to the Black Templars when they went, Black Templars aren't their own thing anymore, because obviously for a long time Black Templars with their own codex. And then they basically in 8th edition just went, nah, you're just Space Marines now. And everyone with Black Templars was like, but I should be my own codex. I've been my own codex forever. It's like, yeah, but you're not anymore. And I think that's the weird thing with the Quins. It's like I think there is that sort of desire from Quins players where it's like, well, I'm a Harlequin player. That's my army. Well, it's like, well, you can still do that army. It's just in Craftworld. And it's like, oh, okay, weird.
Well, it'd be interesting to see the rules. Like, are they, because they're clearly not just Craftworld Aeldari, faction keyword. They're still a separate army. There's a separate section of the book. I wonder, maybe 10th edition they go like, here's a full range refresh, all the models are fine, so here's a bunch of new models, a bit like Black Templars, like you say, to then justify the range being big enough to be its own dedicated army. It reminds me a lot of when Scions first came on the scene. They were their own codex, and then eventually they just got wrapped into the Astra Militarum, because it's like, well, actually they're not big enough as a model range to be their own thing, so let's just consume it into the Astra Militarum book. A bit like sort of what they did with Admech. You got, Adeptus Mechanicus and Adeptus Scutari. Or just Scutari. Yeah,
it was just Scutari.
Yeah. They just did those as two separate books, and then eventually they merged them into one. It's interesting because they're all really interesting, unique, super sub factions within a range that could be fleshed out into their own armies if they were given a bit more sort of love and care and just churned out a bunch more models with them. But it feels like Harlequins, I mean, what would you add to Harlequins? It feels like their range is complete, but I'm sure people would be like, oh, I want XYZ, I want Harlequins Flyer or something mad. I don't know.
Yeah, I think with the Harlequins, it really is just another vehicle option, really. It needs to be something like the Flyer, even like some kind of play on like a war suit or something different in that sense. Like I like the idea of almost like a puppet type thing, because obviously one of the things that's quite common with like the laughing god and like the image of it is like there's a lot of people who do like those dioramas where they've got like the Harlequins almost posed like they're string puppets, and they've got like the laughing god above them kind of like pulling the strings and all that sort of stuff. So like maybe they could have like a Wraith Lord model where it's controlled by someone who's like hides, and then that just runs out, and then it's the Harlequin controls it from far away or something.
Yeah, I mean they could do like an avatar of the laughing god, a bit like the flaming avatar. Do one to represent their god.
Well, the avatar of the laughing god becomes a bit of an oddity, because the reason why there's an avatar of the Incarn is because of the way that the Incarn was kind of shattered out of Beltan, and then it was sort of linked to the avatar of Cain. And then the reason there's the avatar of Cain is because Cain was shattered, but the laughing god is still very much around. So I don't think it kind of works, but again, you can come up with new lore for why that works, and I'm sure it'll be fine. At the end of the day, the ability to field an avatar of the laughing god would definitely be something worth exploring. But yeah, I think that's the thing with the Harlequins at the moment. You're absolutely right. It's like, what do you add to Harlequins? They've pretty much got everything they need right now. So
yeah, without fundamentally changing their kind of USP. Like you could add in a shooting unit or a sniping unit, and it's like, but they're not meant to be that. They're meant to be sort of close combat dancers and have that kind of play style to them. So yeah, it's hard to add something into a very narrow view of what they should be without expanding out on that. Not to say it's not possible. I mean, we've not really thought about it, so
no, of course.
I'm sure someone paid to do it would come up with something and do a good job.
Well, exactly. I'm sure if we read a few books or sat around and spitballed some ideas for a few days, we'd come up with something worth doing, or a reason why we wanted to do whatever it was that we came up with. I mean, again, the reality of it is, when it comes to the Elder range anyway, it's a lot of it just comes down to what Jez wants to make. That's basically the driving force behind what happens with Elder.
Yeah, plumb the
like-
archives, flip back through his old sketches, new sketches.
Yeah. So what has Jez come up with for the Elder? Cool, we'll do that then, and that's usually.
Yeah, I wonder about the new Aeldari stuff, like the new scout bikes and stuff. Like if that was stuff that he's done.
Possibly.
They've not said. Normally they
like
maybe that because they sometimes do like those design interviews and stuff with him. Roll them out for the crowds to, praise. Maybe we'll get one of those in the next few weeks when the Codex comes out.
Quite possibly. I mean, I'm excited about those particular kits. I need to get to grips with them and start petting them up. But I've got to circle back and finish off all the other ranges. I've hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, I will have finished my Altark and have posted a nice picture of that on the Instagrams. And now I'll be rotating back into finishing the rest of my ranges. And then, I want to get those bikes done. I want to basically, for the first time ever, Phil, I want to finish a complete box set that I bought, and finish the entirety of a bit of it.
That'll be satisfying to have done.
I imagine so. I've never done it before, Phil, so it'll be it's a journey of discovery. But I'm now going to have to go and embark upon that, because I reckon that'll do, mate. Goodbye, everyone.
Oh, goodbye. Goodbye.
I like how you said "ah" as if you were going to be like, no, I've still got more to talk about.
It's like, I want to talk more. I just don't have anything to say.
Never been a problem for me.
That's true.